I did it. I did it. No screw ups yet. Tonight, by popular demand, I have my pal Bob Hutt on, and I'm bringing him on right now. There you are. Hello, Bob.
Hello, Larry. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm gonna ask because I have no pictures or anything to put up, so I can't play with that. But I'm gonna ask anybody who's listening that has any questions for Bob pertaining to HISA or Parks Racetrack, just write them in, because while Bob is speaking, I'm going to be looking at the comments, unlike I did last week and every other week, because many questions came in, and this was pointed out to me by a friend of mine. Many questions came in after I made a comment, and then by the time I finished with the comment, I lost the question. Too many more came in. So today, because Bob's going to take the floor, except when I butt in, maybe not. I'm going to be watching the comments. So if you have any questions at all, just write them down, and I'll ask Bob. I'll relay him to Bob, and he will answer anything. But why I asked Bob to come on today was because there is so much confusion, and with everybody, from trainers to everybody's involved in thoroughbred racing. There's so many questions, so many unanswered questions that nobody could explain. When I talked to Bob about it, he explained it perfectly, and I really believe that he read the whole HISA contract, knows all the rules and regulations, and he's going to explain it, because last week and the week before, when I tried to explain it, I made a couple of misstatements that I thought were true and accurate, but Bob straightened them out. So rather than me talk about something I really don't know that much about, Bob knows everything about it. So, Bob, why don't you? I don't know where you want to start, but you can start with explaining, if you want. If you want to talk about this, Bob was the reason I showed a film, a picture of the turf course at Parks, and every thoroughbred trainer that I know told me, and every thoroughbred trainer in the country knows, that Parks turf course is the worst in the world. And a few horses in the last few weeks died on that, had to be euthanized on that track because of no maintenance at all. And Bob was the one that called HISA and said, you're the only organization that can stop this, and the only reason I'm calling you is because you're the only ones that could stop it. And there's a lot of big races coming up in the following days, and you got to get somebody down here before another horse dies. So if you want to start with that, you could start with that and then go into anything. And I'm going to kind of keep my mouth shut and listen and watch for the comments. So go ahead, Bob.
Okay, I'll be happy to, Larry. First of all, as many of you know from a few weeks ago, I am the CEO and president of Uptown Charlie Brown Stud, which is a racing and breeding stable. We breed our own horses. We race. We have 3 stallions, and we've been rather successful. I guess we have micro shares that we sell $500 for 1%. Despite, against all odds, how's that, Larry? Against all odds, somehow, miraculously, I was elected in January 2023 as PTHA president, representing breeders, trainers, owners, 2,500 plus in the state of Pennsylvania that race at Parks Racetrack. I replaced an icon in Sal DeBunda, who is also on the Pennsylvania Racing Commission appointed by the governor. And he had 20 years running that organization. And they elected me against all odds. And came in and inherited a board that was very loyal to Mr. DeBunda. And it's been rather difficult to say the least, and been uncovering things. Anyway,
Bob, these are the same people out on Freehold Raceway, right?
no. PTHA is the horseman.
Okay, all right.
Well, who's on first? I don't know.
Go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, I took over that, and I represent 2,500 horsemen, and I came in with good intentions. I have a long background in insurance claims. I ran an insurance company, professional liability, medical malpractice, and legal malpractice. I had my own structured settlement company. I helped write laws in New York State for the periodic payment. So I have extensive courtroom experience. Even though I'm not a lawyer, they work for me and claims people. And also with the insurance companies, I'm a general agent with every top insurance company you could name: New York Life, Met, Prudential, Pacific Life, AIG, just to name a few, Berkshire Hathaway, all of them. So I came in with good intentions, only to find that I had been stonewalled with my own board in trying to get things done. When we had a horse die on August 24th, who happened to be owned in part by one of the board members, I was horrified when I saw the pictures, just like you did, Larry, and everybody else. And I tried desperately to reach out to Joe Wilson, who is the chief operating officer for Greenwood Racing. That is who owned Atlantic City Racecourse, the now soon to be defunct Freehold Raceway, which is estimated to be the oldest racetrack in the country, between 175 and 195 years old. And they also happen to own Parks, where I am. It seems the book Atlantic City, of course, went the way of the dinosaur. Freehold is about to go the way of the dinosaur. And the only reason we're open in Pennsylvania, in order for casinos to operate, they have to have a racetrack. Well, they have a racetrack, and they did very, very well last year. They made over $550 million. But as far as putting money into the racetrack, let's just be kind and say it leaves a great deal to be desired. Unless people have cell phones that are 30 years old. We have water trucks that are 30 years old. They still say Philadelphia Park on them. We have Harrow equipment. And it's been an uphill battle to get them to spend any real money, similar to what I guess, I wasn't there at Freehold at Atlantic City Racecourse, but they must have had the same difficulties. But they have to have us in order to keep the casino open. And that's true for the other 5 racetracks, 3 harness and 2 thoroughbred trucks in Pennsylvania. So anyway, after this horse died, I tried every which way to reach out to Mr. Wilson, sent him a polite letter saying, please don't run tomorrow. It was Sunday now. The race was on Saturday. And he had turf races scheduled for Monday. And I said, please don't go on the turf. Let's investigate. And if necessary, let's call in HISA. Let them investigate. If repairs are necessary, fine. If they're not necessary and they give it a clean bill of health, fine. But based on the videos, Larry, you and I and the viewers saw where you can put your fist into one of those holes, and there were numerous, and go up to midway up your arm, almost to your elbow. It was dangerous. And just filling it in with dirt, as you know, Larry, will not correct the problem. So anyway, it took till 5 o'clock at night for me to get word that they're off the turf. But that was only after I reached out to the chief operating officer, or I should say the CEO of HISA, Lisa Lazarus. And thanks to her wisdom, and she saw the video, was horrified just like we were. She said, I'm sending my investigators, you're not to run. And they came there, they found a problem with the irrigation system, which was corrected by Mr. Wilson and his staff. And they were supposed to come back to re-inspect, speak to some of the trainers. And if they gave it their approval, they would use it the week of the Pennsylvania Derby, which is the biggest day of the year at parks. We have several $2 million races, the Pennsylvania Derby and the Cotillion, and some other stake races. Well, they approved it. Lo and behold, the first race run on the turf, another horse fell and was fatally injured, almost in the exact same spot as the one 2 weeks ago. There's been a lot written in the Philadelphia Inquirer. The horsemen are all good, hardworking, decent people, and they didn't do anything wrong. And basically, Mr. Wilson has gone public that the week of the Pennsylvania Derby, he ran 2 races, turf races, Monday and Tuesday. He had 2 scheduled on Saturday, which was Pennsylvania Derby Day, and publicly has said that was going to be the last turf race of the year. And the question somebody has to ask him is why? If the course was safe, why would you end turf racing when the other tracks in the Mid-Atlantic are still having turf racing? I can't answer that. But anyway, they've been shut down, and he has now promised that he is going to make some improvements, either replace the turf course, close the turf course. Our board has asked him to consider putting in a Tapeta track, to be continued. He has finally answered a reporter and said safety is his main priority. So hopefully he's going to replace those water trucks and harrows and replace the turf course or do a Tapeta track. Or he may close the turf course altogether. That's management's decision. All we can do on behalf of the horsemen is ask him to do it. So I was also threatened that my action calling for safety was going to ruin the Pennsylvania Derby. Larry, I'm happy to say that we had the second largest attendance in the history of the Pennsylvania Derby with record handle, and that proved false too. And I will fight for the animals are so good to us, just like I know you would, Larry. We want to make it a safe environment for all the animals entrusted into our care and the jockeys that ride them. So that's what's going on at parks. And you mentioned that I have a lawsuit against my my board that I inherited from the previous administration, and that's still ongoing. I'm not going to talk about it publicly, other than they've been ordered by the court to show cause why my motion shouldn't be granted. And all I asked for is their removal. I didn't ask for a cent from them, not a penny, and let us do a full forensic examination to see what went on in the past 20 years. So, yeah, we're fighting City Hall a little bit, and they have 30 days to respond. And then the court ordered that all depositions be completed in 30 days, and then they'll entertain a decision. So that's where we are right now. So now let's get to HISA. Larry, you've been saying that we signed up for HISA, the horsemen. And Larry and I had a conversation this past Wednesday, I believe. And I tried to tell Larry that's not true at all. Nobody signed up for HISA. Not a single horseman anywhere signed up for HISA. So let me tell your audience how it came about. Certain groups that had sought political favor and do not like horse racing got to the politicians in Washington. And basically, HISA was created by Congress and was pushed down our throat. And they gave it to a private organization that adopted European rules that really have no place in thoroughbred racing. The racing commissions all over the United States, and that's where the problem is. We didn't have like a central racing commission. We had all different rules in every different state. They've been relegated to issuing dog licenses, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, because you don't know how much you miss somebody until you lose them. And for example, what would be a small penalty or a slap on the wrist, or if you dealt with a contamination case, at least you can go and get a stay, which is your rights in America. And under HISA, our constitutional rights have been completely removed. They are the judge, jury, and executioner, and you are presumed guilty and must prove your innocence. For them to take away penalties that are so harsh, they mostly give out 2-year provisional suspensions. And not only do they give that to the trainer, think of all the people that are employed by that trainer. It could be small, it could be a large outfit. They're out of jobs, and there's no trial, and the cost to have a hearing is so prohibitive that most of these trainers who have little money, they can't afford it, and they're basically out of business. Now, if that's not, as an owner, Larry, you keep bringing up lawsuits. The owners cannot sue Hutt. They're protected. They are judge, jury, and executioner, and they suspend your horse. So, for example, if you get your trainer gets a 2-year provisional suspension and you think you're going to move it to another barn, who cares? That's not happening. They suspend the horse for 6 years, a month.
But can't you appeal any of these decisions that they make?
You can appeal it, but and you have to go through arbitration. But the rules are clear. Like let me give you an example and show you how ridiculous some of these cases are. And I want to preface this by saying, you have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Lisa Lazarus has been nothing but very, very nice to me every time I've spoken to her. And I've given her some examples I'll share with your audience. And Larry could tell you, I have a sixth sense of humor. I always had one. And when I've been able to get her and her top aides from Haiwu, there's HISA, H-I-S-A, and you have Haiwu, which is her military arm that looks for notches on their gun belt. I've had a chance to sit down across the table from her, and I let her and her assistants talk and let people ask questions, and then it's my turn, and I'll give you a couple of examples so you understand where I'm coming from. And horsemen will understand this. Let's say, for example, Larry, you have a horse in some small training facility, and it could be a 5,000, 7,500 claimer, and you're going to run at a lower tier, not Belmont, not Del Mar, not Santa Anita. You're going to run at a lower tier racetrack in the Midwest. I don't want to pick any names, but you know what I'm talking about. And you have your horse ready to go, and now you got to van your horse to pick a track, Larry, like Thistle Downs, Belterra, something like that.
Go ahead, that's fine.
Okay. And you say to somebody at the training center, hey, could you take my horse to Belterra? I'm just giving you an example. And he says, sure. How much to ship? You don't have a lot of money. $150. Okay, pick him up, stay there, bring him back. Well, you have the horse shipped, and Larry, you did such a great job training your horse, you win. That's not the good news, that's the bad news. Now they test your horse and find out your horse has traces of cocaine. Enough cocaine that it would have no material effect on the horse whatsoever. It's like taking 1 grain of sand and dumping it in the Atlantic Ocean. You now get a provisional suspension for 2 years, even though it's obviously a contamination case. You didn't do anything, and it has no effect on the horse anyway. And now you're guilty, and you must prove yourself innocent. So you find out from the van driver, are you using drugs? And he goes, yeah. Using cocaine? Yeah, I had a little. Can I get a statement, please? And he gives you a statement. He gets tested. He has it in his blood system. That's an obvious contamination case. You still had a penalty of 2 years. Now, in recent times, they have started to take away these contamination cases. But the case I just gave you is it happened to somebody. Another one happened at Monmouth with like a mom and pop trainer, 50 years in the business. They never had a problem. Somebody urinated in the stall, and it just goes on and on and on. Meanwhile, the real drug cheats, they are now emboldened because HISA is taking away therapeutic equipment, machines that massage the muscles, have no effect. I mean, a prize fighter goes into the ring, he gets a massage before. We can't do that. So the cheaters are now winning at a higher percentage. They have drugs that, for whatever reason, can't be caught. A lot of them, I understand, Larry, are coming from South America. And it's an ongoing problem. Now, in fairness to HISA, they have listened, and they are starting to react to the horsemen, because the worst thing that could happen to you, Larry, is you win a race. Now, oh my God, what are they going to find? And you know you didn't do anything. So what HISA has said in the past, you've got to test the van driver who takes your horse. I mean, it's not even in the realm of sanity that you're responsible for the van driver who ships your horse, or in the receiving barn, there could be somebody else. You're not even at the racetrack who's using drugs and touches your horse, and there it goes. It comes up in a blood test, and now you got to prove your innocence. And the cost to do so is prohibitive. So in fairness to HISA, we have brought these things up. We have argued them. Now we come to the most important thing.
This is a good question. That's why I put it up. So whenever you're ready to answer it, just, can you read it, Bob, or you want me to read it?
No, leave it just the way you have it.
Okay.
Okay, so let me tell you about voided claims. It was automatic that the claim was voided. So let me give you an example. One of our owners at Parks claimed a horse. So far, we're doing good. 10 days later, he re-entered in a race. He won the race. Everything's wonderful. A week later, the drug test comes back from when he claimed the horse, and it comes up positive. HISA voids the claim, even though he wants to keep the claim. They give a provisional suspension to the original trainer, and now he wants to keep the horse. He can't keep it, and they take away his purse after claiming a horse and winning the race. Well, obviously, HISA should have made a rule that if you claim a horse, you can't run it until the first drug test comes back to avoid this. So now it's going back and forth, and HISA may adjust it that if you want to keep the horse, you can, but it still doesn't correct the first problem, that you legitimately claim a horse, win the race, and you don't know that the first drug test hasn't come back yet. And there's been other things like that that have been very difficult. Let me give you an example at Parks. At Parks, we saw something that we hadn't seen ever. TCO2 tests, milkshakes. All of a sudden, everybody was coming up with a positive for a TCO2 milkshake. And HISA would randomly select a horse, randomly, remember that, to have a blood test, about an hour and a half before the race is to be run. Well, in most states, it's not a major problem because you go into the barn, you have enough vets to take the blood. Not at Parks. And I'll tell you the story how this came about. And to Lisa's credit, she corrected it immediately. So I was at Saratoga. We were having a meeting, and she was telling what she's doing and listening to the problems of everybody. Then finally, it was my turn. And she had her vice president with her. I'm not going to mention any names. And me being Bob, I just said to her, Lisa, how are you? She goes, fine, Bob. I said, listen, how long are you in the business of fixing races? And she looked at me like in disbelief. I said, how long have you been in the business of fixing races? And she says, what do you mean? I said, well, you've been fixing races now for about 3 months, so I thought when I have you here, I'll address it in front of everybody else. She says, Bob, what are you referring to? I said, the TCO2 tests at Parks. She says, what's wrong with our tests? I said, are you aware that an hour and a half, and Larry, you know how important this is when horses are getting worked up on race day? Some trainers have to walk a half mile to a mile with their horse over to the receiving barn to have the state vet take the blood. And some of these horses have reacted very, very poorly. So by the time they come in the paddock, they're washed out. The public doesn't know that you took blood. And if you like statistics, why don't you see how many you tested and how many of these favorite horses have won? Because I don't think it's even 2%. Wouldn't the public like to know that you're taking blood an hour before the race and the horse is all worked up? And every trainer here is telling me that this is insane. You can't do it. And if a horse gets worked up enough, the vet will not take the blood from the horse because they're afraid the horse is going to, attack them. So they let that horse go. And then another horse who had blood taken loses to that horse. Lisa, that's not right. We don't have enough vets to go to the barn to take the blood. It's a bad policy. To her credit, within 3 days, they stopped it and they started going to the barn. And these are some of the things, because this is a government agency that was created, and they are the judge, jury, and executioner, and your right to a fair trial or be presumed innocence doesn't exist. And in fairness, every day that goes by, they're trying to start to listen. The rules that they apply are for European horses that do jumpers and hunters. It's not real in the thoroughbred industry.
And the levels that they're testing for are so low, they're more like everything they're doing is more like the European model, from banking the turns to drugs and everything else.
Yep, that's what they've done. So
why don't she just hire you or hire somebody that is going to tell it the way it is, that maybe don't have a big stable or just a regular guy like you that just really cares for the horses and the horsemen, rather than making friends with both sides of the fence, and sit down and tell them that a lot of these things they came in. And now you just mentioned three things that were good for them, good that they did it. And I also will say that however they were formed, and they needed to do something because nobody was doing anything. And I mentioned on one of my shows a couple of weeks ago that finally last year, a bunch of horsemen in the Midwest, I believe, got together and put together a whole committee that wanted to do the same thing Heiser is doing and try to control that whole situation and make it better, which they had a better shot at doing it. But where were they before Heiser? Why did it take the government to get involved, that screws up everything anyway, then hire 40, 50 people who don't have a clue, and probably most of them never been to the barn area, never been to a racetrack. They all have, I read a lot of their credentials. They know a lot about drugs and they know a lot about representative athletes and everything else. But why did these organizations, horseman organizations, come together last year after they saw the disaster that Heiser was going to cause? And Heiser, in their defense, again, almost between not knowing what they're doing in that area that they were hired to do, and seeing and opening the door and seeing the complete mess and almost impossible situation that they have, they almost didn't have a choice but to slow down, but to listen to some of these things instead of giving 2-year suspensions for minute charges, drug charges or something like that. But that's what they almost had to do in their defense, because how else, like if you say from now on, like in China, I think it is, there's no thieves, because if you get caught stealing, they chop your hands off, and that ends the problem. So that's what they did here. In the meantime, they're destroying the livelihood of the trainers. they're destroying, and most of all, because the trainer can always get another job, he'll always survive. A horse is going to die. If they don't help, if they don't create situations where these horses can be protected and given a chance to recuperate after races, and on and on and on and on, so somebody got to step in and say, "Look, you went too far. I understand why you closed the door completely, but you better start opening this door a little bit faster, and you better come and hang out with me, meaning you, for a while, and listen to some of these things." And when I asked the question, and I did, I read in your bylaws that you can't give GastroGuard up to, you have to stop 2-3 days in advance. My answer was why? Why? And they had no answer for why. I don't get it.
Larry, there's no scientific evidence, but what they're doing is they're emboldening the real cheaters and the 99% of honest, hardworking men and women trainers. They're having their hands tied, and let me just tell you a little bit more about HISA, and then I'm going to tell you what my solution would be to catch the drug cheats. Nobody's going to listen to me because it's just common sense. But
did you answer this question already here?
Yes, I did. Yes,
I can take that off, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So let me just tell you a little bit so that you know what's going on. Nobody signed up for HISA. The Jockey Club, if their attorney made comments that they support HISA, that's on them. The Jockey Club is simply a registry. When horses are foaled and born, that you register with the Jockey Club, they give out foal certificates, and that's where the horses are named. It's a registry. They don't give out any punishments or do anything like that. They've been around forever. That is the only recognized body, the Jockey Club out of Kentucky. And as far as the horsemen, nobody signed up for this. This was the United States government in private industry setting up these rules, which is unheard of in any business. So here's what happened. The PTHA, we belong to the THA, which is 6 racetracks. The HBPA, they have 23, 24 racetracks, and they have contested that HISA is unconstitutional. In Pennsylvania, we have 5 racetracks, 3 thoroughbred, 3 harness. 5 of my brother-sister racetracks are with the HBPA. I inherited from my predecessor being with the 6 and the THA. Regardless, I can tell you, I don't know anybody at Parks, any trainer that is in favor of HISA. Maybe you will find a few, but no one really, wants HISA. Who wants, for example, Larry, if you run a restaurant, you want the government coming into your restaurant and telling you how to cook the food? Making up the recipes? I mean, it's insane. It's insanity. So the racing commissions, by and large, have been relegated to giving out dog licenses. They don't enforce any penalties. In Pennsylvania, for example, every living creature on the earth has cobalt. The normal limit in a horse was 50 picograms. One trainer bought a horse privately, 10 days later ran it, won the race, his misfortune, and it came up after being split sample, 27 picograms. They reduced the limit of cobalt that's allowable to 25 picograms. A picogram is a grain of sand in the ocean. They gave him a 2-year provisional suspension. He had a hearing. I had an opportunity to speak with, at lunchtime, I just happened to bump into a very nice judge who was doing the arbitration. And I said, how could you ruin a man's career who bought a horse 10 days ago? He said, Bob, according to the laws, I don't have any leniency that I mean, common sense wise, it's ridiculous, but I have to follow the law, and it is 27 picograms, and therefore he gets a 2-year provisional suspension. He lost his whole business. He's out of business. What did he do wrong? If he waited one more day, Larry, the cobalt would have dissipated and it would have been under 25. But these are the kind of things that are going on, and where common sense should prevail.
So why can't you tell Lisa that?
I did. And her answer to me was, I didn't know he had bought the horse 10 days before, but it doesn't change anything. And obviously, as a human being, she didn't make up the rules. These are the rules that these committees inherited, and they're trying to understand. Now, what's going on, and your audience should know this, the constitutionality of being judged guilty instead of presumed innocent, which is completely against what all Americans think. We think we're innocent until proven guilty. Even if you murder somebody, you're innocent until you're declared by a jury of your peers guilty. It doesn't work that way with HISA. You're guilty. You have to prove your innocence, and that's insanity.
So in other words, what they're doing in a way is they're killing you. Then they realize after they kill you that you were not guilty, but you can't sue them. But they say we'll pay for the funeral.
Basically,
Unbelievable.
Well, I'll give you another example. But anyway, let me get back to the HBPA.
I have another question from that same person down here, if you can see it.
I'll pick it up in 1 second, but look,
Okay.
I want your audience to understand something, what's going on. HISA and the federal government basically said, we can't challenge the constitutionality. Well, we did. And in the Fifth Circuit Court in Texas, not my organization, but the HBPA, who I feel very, very strongly about, they're good people. They challenged the constitutionality, and they said it was going nowhere. Well, lo and behold, we now have reason to believe that the Supreme Court of the United States of America is going to hear the case. We expect a ruling, a preliminary ruling before the big one, because the Fifth Circuit Court.
What does the preliminary hearing mean? What does that mean?
The HISA is trying to say that they want the Supreme Court to throw out the decision by the Fifth Circuit in Texas, and you could get more information on that, Larry, if you speak with Eric Hamelback, who is the CEO of the HBPA. If you want, I'll give you his number later. And they are fighting tooth and nail, and it looks like this case is going to be heard by the Supreme Court of the United States. And if they win, HISA will be declared unconstitutional. There are a couple of venues that are running not under HISA's domain. I believe West Virginia is one. I think Texas is another. They have given up their right to simulcasting. When you give up your right to simulcasting, that means your pari-mutuel revenues are going to be basically whatever you get on track. But they feel very strongly that they're not constitutional, and that's the price they're paying. So I don't want anybody in your audience to think Parks or any racetrack anywhere in America signed up for HISA. And right now, by the way, Standardbred racing is not under the domain of HISA. So, for example, in Pennsylvania, Parks, we pay about $900,000, maybe between $900,000 and $1 million to HISA, in which we split 50-50 with the casino operated by Chief Operating Officer Joe Wilson. That's one of the peeves that I have, because Penn National, headed by Todd Mosteller, who is very strongly against HISA, he gets 33% of the pari-mutuel revenues, and he only pays 33% of the bill, and Penn Gaming pays the other 67% to HISA. At Parks, we're only getting 15.5% of the pari-mutuel revenues. Greenwood Racing is getting 84.5%. That's one of the things, if I get a decent board who will support me, I intend to challenge that, because owners paying for the horses, the training, the vet bills and everything, call it a Broadway show, and Greenwood is taking 85% of the profits. So basically, we can't even grow the business because everything is winding up with Greenwood. So we're paying 50% right now to HISA, and HISA is judge, jury, and executioner to hear the argument that since we're only getting 15.5% of the pari-mutuel revenues from simulcasting and live handle, we should only be paying 15.5% of that approximately $1 million bill, not $500,000. And that's one of my pet peeves that I would like to get the board behind me to present the case to HISA. They can make the decision to say either I'm right or I'm wrong. And there's the precedent that Penn National is only paying 33%, which is their pari-mutuel revenues. By the way, at Parks, our pari-mutuel revenues, what we receive as horsemen are the lowest in the country. So next time, Larry, don't say we signed up for this. Nobody signed up for this. This was
all right. Two things, and I have to interrupt because I'll forget. The reason I said that, and I misquoted 2 weeks ago when I said that, I said it because I read that I think it was the attorney for the Jockey Club in 2020 when they were first putting this together. He was the one that praised it, and he was the one through political connection said, "This is a must. This has to be." And why would the president or an attorney for the Jockey Club? And I know that they're just a bookkeeping operation, but I also know that that person, the attorney, he could have been the attorney for a library on a dead end street. He still has friends in high places, and when they make these statements that HISA is good, and I'll tell you, when he made that statement, and he did make that statement, even though maybe he didn't have much weight, but I still think that he probably got that job because of political connections. So it probably carried some weight. But when he made that statement, you have to understand that when he made that statement, there were hundreds and hundreds of horses dying at every racetrack. Something had to be done. And then they bring in HISA. And the only reason, and you mentioned harness racing, that they're not there yet, the only reason I believe, and I got a lot of calls from many, many Hall of Fame trainers and drivers in the harness racing game, that they said, whatever you can do on your podcasts, let them know that harness racing, it'll destroy it and everything else. The only reason, in my opinion, that they didn't go after harness racing is because it's like going after somebody that has terminal cancer and has 3 weeks to live. Why would you fight to sign contracts with a guy that's going to die in 2 weeks? Because harness racing is in a bad state of affairs right now, and they're fighting for their lives. And HISA will put the final nail in the coffin for harness racing, regardless what anybody thinks. But that's and thank God they have they have a voice in the horsemen. And now that HISA showed its true colors, harness racing, if they do want to come in, they're going to have to make massive changes, which they're not going to make, because then it's going to go right back to the same thing. I don't believe that HISA is ever going to be able to handle, and I don't know the answer to this, but I don't believe HISA is going to be able to handle or win the battle that they're up against as far as drugs go. The crooks always find another way. You can outlaw, I said this later, you can outlaw you can make all the gun laws in the world. The bad guys are still going to get the guns. And that's just the way it's going to be. And
I do have a solution, Larry. It's common sense, but nobody's going to do it. The drugs that are coming in now are undetectable. When you have people who just got their licenses, they were a groomer or a hot walker, and they're giving out trainer's license like they're M&Ms. All you have to do is take 2-3 bonds, put in cameras everywhere. When you see trainers who have lifetime percentages between 2 and 5%, winning at 25%, It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know they didn't get smart in the last week. And what you do is you take those very, very excellent trainers who now rewrote the training manual, and you put them in the barns with the cameras for 90 or 120 days. They'll never win another race. And you take all of them and put them there under surveillance. And that'll be the end of the cheating and the drugs coming in here. But it's common sense, Larry.
Well, let me give you my idea. That could never happen, because how they tried something very, very similar at the Meadowlands. They in the receiving barn, which the horse had to be there the day before, they put cameras and everything else. Then they hired guards around the clock to watch the cameras that were in each stall, and they had a security guy in front of each barn. You couldn't get in there. When you went in to feed the horses, they checked the feed and everything else. Well, after about three, in the winning percentages of the leading trainers, who were basically the cheaters, they stayed the same. So what they did after about 2 months, they eliminated the cameras. They eliminated it. But let me ask you this, and maybe you could find out from Lisa. My way, because I don't believe they're ever going to be able to win the battle against drugs. And the sad part about that is, if it wasn't that the horses were being destroyed, horses were being killed by trying to find dosage, the right proper dosage of a medicine or a painkiller or a broncho that's coming from another country that's been synthesized or whatever. If none of these drugs were hurting horses, I would say, God, do whatever you have to do to create a level playing field. You're soon going to realize that a horse can only go as fast as he was meant to go, and they're each going to find their own level anyway. So after you get to a certain level, because of using drugs, you're going to be at that level, racing against horses that are doing the same. It all finds its level. But here's my idea. Tell me if it could work, because I don't know. But it would be the first thing I would suggest at a table of veterinarians and scientists and Lisa and you and all horseman committee members. I would say this, only because I don't think they're ever going to win the battle. See if this is possible. You can ask Lisa. I have no idea, but it would be the first statement, and it go right in the garbage pail, or maybe we could build on that. As soon as the horse is born, he's registered. Take his blood, analyze that blood. That blood has to be the same all the way up until the day he dies. Now, if a foreign subject, any kind of drug, anything foreign is in that blood, which is on record now, this and this and this and this, except for whatever drugs are allowed, meaning Lasix or whatever, that's an automatic positive. And the first time you give a warning, and then after that you just give very strict, you barred for 6 months or whatever. But that's the only way. But then again, you're still going to get a lot of this contamination stuff and everything. I don't see any way around it, and it's sad. But I truly believe that I know Heisa was put together to do the right thing. They're well-meaning. The problem is the people that they put there. Like I said on my podcast, it's like putting a librarian, all of a sudden throw him in the cage with lions and say, you're a lion trainer. It ain't going to happen. Not only is it probably an impossible task for the best scientists and chemists in the world, I don't even know if they could figure this out. But you get 50, 60, 70 people that Lisa has on the payroll. And half of them, the other company that you mentioned, that's part of Lisa's company, they find the labs that do the testing and this and that and everything else. And how much of each of these tests going to cost, and how many more fines in money are they going to take out from the trainer, from the owners per start, for this, for that? It's all going to go for nothing. It's 85 million that they put down for expenses for 2025. What have they done? they did a few good things. They took the race course, the grass course off. They found that lab that was cheating. The guy was cheating. They did a couple of things, but I don't know how they're gonna. I don't know how they're possibly gonna do that. So, being that they can't, in my opinion, they can't do that. Why don't they concentrate on things that they could do and could fix that are just as detrimental to the horse? Like we spoke about when I came down there to see you, the bank on the turns. That's when if the turns are flat, the whole the whole mechanism of the horse changes. The whole weight distribution changes. That slipping and sliding and centrifugal force will make a horse break a horse down just as fast as giving a wrong amount of a powerful elephant tranquilizer to a horse. Both of them are gonna kill the horse. So then I don't think so. And even if they keep trying, at least put half your staff on to the racetracks and say, okay, take care of this turf course, shut this turf course down, bank them turns to 4 degrees, make them each track, especially on mile race tracks, the bank has to be at least 4.5 degrees. Do these type of things that will help a horse, because between the drugs that are killing them and the racetracks, between the surfaces and the no banks that are killing them, I don't see what. And then when I had the price thing up, half of the 85 million is going for attorneys, and rent, and salaries. So do something that's going to at least help the horse. So right now, between the drugs and the no banks and the turns, that poor horse, he's got no shot. I mean, I guarantee if horses were told, they would say after a couple of these races, because like I told you today, the difference between the rail and the 4-horse lane around a turn on a mile racetrack is about 40 feet. 40 feet. If that turn is banked just 4 degrees, it becomes dead even, because the horse on a bank turn is not slowing up in stride. Is the weight distribution stays exactly the same, where the horse on the rail, they become even. In other words, if they had a race of a 6 furlong race, they would both go the exact same time. Where if the turn was flat, the horse in the 4 lanes, which is probably 30 feet out, they lose 30, 40 feet. And no chance of making it up. But a bank turn will make it up, plus be safer to land on. And why don't they just concentrate on that instead of suspending guys that have these minute positives and suspending them for 2 years, basically ruining their lives? Look, the amount of racehorses that are around today is 1/3 of what it was when I was in the game. Same thing with the trainers. I remember years ago when I was in the game, there were 5,000 thoroughbred trainers. And plenty of owners. The owners are going, the trainers are going, and the ones that are not going, they're going to be forced to go because Heist is going to suspend them all. So these are the things that if I was sitting across from Lisa, I would tell her. You have 40 guys on your pet. Just make a trip to each thing. Bring a surveyor with you. Or it's simple. Just go to the racetrack with 2 pieces of stick and a string. Put the stick on the crown of the racetrack. Put the other stick right on the rail and run a what? If that angle is not 4 or 5 degrees, you say you got to bank this. Get a truckload of you're gonna have to spend thousands of dollars in dirt, but you got to fix it, because this is a detriment to the horse. The same way them drugs that you're trying to stop that you're not going to be able to stop, the same way that's a detriment, this is a detriment too. In the last 2 podcasts I did, I spoke like I was the horse. Like if I was the horse, I'd come back after that, and the question I asked you today, I said, listen, a friend of mine might be racing at your racetrack, but I have just one question, because he's going to start claiming horses. And the question that he asked me is what I'm asking you. I'd like to know what the bank and the turns are. If the turns are banked less than 2% or flat, then my advice to him is to claim front runners that run short, because you got no chance coming from behind, because you'd have to go around the last turn 3, 4, 5 wide. You're going to lose 60 feet. 60 feet you're going to lose just by the last turn if the turns are not banked. If the turns are banked at 4%, just 4%, which are probably the bank on all the turns in Europe, claim a horse that comes from behind. Claim a horse that a long course. They're easy to keep sound. They're easy, but if there's no bank, claim a sprinter. That's a front runner. So these are the things that I would tell, and she should do that, because to me that's as important as finding. Look, nobody knows better than me that everybody has a price. Everybody has a price. And just like Hester found out through an informant, through a guy that ratted on him about this one lab that was switching the samples and doing what they were, some kind of I don't know what it was, but they caught him. They were switching samples. They had some inside information, and certain trainers benefited from their blood not being tested by being so. Yeah, you have to concentrate. You have to concentrate. You're not going to win the battle. Well, maybe you're going to. Keep trying to win the battle, but don't neglect the other part. Make believe that the whole thing, and this is what gets me with the race, the racing commissions. All I ever heard my whole life is we protect the betting public. In the meantime, if a horse could talk, he would come back and say, "Bank the fucking turns." That's what he would say. Okay, and they're protecting the betting public. None of this makes sense to me. Where if they were people that knew what the hell they were doing, and I would like to talk to Lisa and say, let me see the qualifications of each one. And I looked up most of them. Most of them, the lawyers, they all have law degrees. I have no idea what that has to do with racing. The other ones have many degrees in drugs and scientists and what the drug does and all of this kind of stuff. Not one has on their resume saying groom, trainer, jockey, or harness driver. None. They have no idea what it is to race at 98 degrees at Hialeah racetrack on a July afternoon and bringing a horse back. You were there. I was there. And every single day at Hialeah racetrack, when I sat in the grandstand, I saw horses come back. And at Hialeah, and I think it maybe even at Gulfstream, I'm not sure, they have 15 hoses hooked up to water. And as soon as the horse comes back, they hose them off. But some of them didn't make it back. Some of them collapsed right after the race from heat exhaustion and everything else. Why don't you figure out, like I'm trying to do, figure out how to put something, and I'm trying to get in touch with Heisa. Maybe you could help me here. Let me just tell you real quick, then we'll get back to you. The heat of the body, the brain controls the body heat. And once a horse's natural temperature is, say 100, we'll just say 100 degrees. Once after a race or during a race, the horse's temperature usually goes up to 102, depending on the weather, the humidity, and everything else. Once that temperature reaches 103, 104, which it does many times, especially in the summer months, organs start to collapse. They start failing. And that's when horses collapse and everything else. What I'm trying to do, and I can't find it, I've been working on this since the Hialeah days, 20 years, 30 years ago. I can't find a rag that you could put on top of the head. Not these things that you freeze in it, because the grooms are never going to do it. You have to make it idiot-proof, like a handkerchief. That when you put a handkerchief, it's just a rag. But in that rag, it's woven in is some kind of chemical that creates a reaction that when you put it on something hot, like between the ears, right where the horse's brain is. Now, a horse's brain is just big as your fist. Put a rag right, build a cap, goes right on top of the horse's head with this material in it, that when the temperature rises, this activates and it cools it down. And you won't have this problem. You'll save hundreds of horses every year by that. These are the things that would help the horse, because I don't understand how HISA is going to solve the problem. By the time they solve the problem, in my opinion, there'll be no horses left to save. There'll be no more business left. So that's all I have to say. If you're going to do it, in my opinion, you're not going to stop the drugs, but at least make the racetrack, like you mentioned it today. Maybe get rid of the turf course and put the artificial dirt in there. Do something to help the horse, and make sure the banks, because once the banks, it's easy to maintain. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, Larry, what you said about the heat, HISA has implemented, and don't hold me to it, but I believe if the heat index, at least at parks, is 105, the heat index, not the temperature. It's a combination of temperature and humidity and everything else. Racing is canceled. So they are trying to make sure that none of the horses run.
I never heard that before. That's a new rule.
Yep. And they monitor it. They will tell us, shut it down, and there's no debating.
Well, that's hooray! Whoever made up that rule. Well, good. They finally did something. Now you have to ask Lisa, what's the lowest temperature? What's the lowest temperature that a horse could race in without doing any damage to his lungs? She don't know. I know. She don't know. 18 degrees below zero. Other than that, you're going to kill the horse. And I guarantee you, if the grandstands were full and it was 19 degrees below zero, they would race. So there's a lot of things that they could do. That's a good rule that they made.
Look, I'm a straight shooter. They came into a situation and they're learning on the fly. It's a private enterprise that they created, and they gave them the power, more powers than the United States government.
Yeah, but Bob, don't destroy lives while you're learning on the job. This is have a just like at the farm, the vet. He has a helper. He's teaching the helper. Yeah. You want to learn on the job? Don't give out fines and suspensions. This way, in 2 years, you'll know 1,000 times more, and then you might even say, "I ruined a lot of fucking lives." When I didn't know what I was doing.
Let me say it this way. I said before, you don't know how much you miss somebody until you lose it. All the racing commissions, they've been around. They understand horse racing. The problem was it wasn't uniform throughout the country, and that's why HISA was created. But there's a lot of experienced people at these various racing commissions that can tell them hundreds and hundreds of years of combined experience in how to deal with situations and why you do it this way and not that way, why you give a stay. They have a right to a hearing, a split sample, and this and that. And basically, those racing commissions, and I don't mean it disparagingly because I have friends at the racing commission, they're giving out dog licenses. And they give out trainers' licenses too.
Bob, there's one or two questions here that you answered this one, right?
I did not answer that question.
Okay.
So an answer, I believe it's Ilias. The answer to your question is avoided claim doesn't necessarily mean that the horse was lame or hurt. If the horse came back with a positive drug test, which could be 10, 15, 20, 30 days later, that claim would be voided and you would see voided claim. The one thing that we have pushed for, and they're about to enact it if they haven't done it already, the person making the claim should have the right, whether they want to keep the horse or give the horse back. It should be the person who's claiming the horse who should have the option, not that you have to give the horse up. So, yes, when you see voided claim, it doesn't necessarily mean the horse was lame or hurt. And the other thing with lame or hurt, here we go again. The state vet makes a subjective finding when the horse is cooling out afterwards, the receiving barn, whether or not the horse is lame. I mean, the horse could be like that every day of the week and says, "Nope, that horse is lame, voided claim." So I don't know how to answer that. That a voided claim automatically means there's something wrong with the horse. Because you could see that horse back in the entry box 4 weeks later. And one of the other problems that we're having, especially I could tell you at various racetracks, people have told me when a horse runs a poor race and they go on the vets list, you have to make an appointment when you can work that horse for the vet. And in some cases, it's been backed up 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Well, the owner's paying bills, and at a major racetrack, you're looking at $3,000-$4,000 with vet bills a month, and the horse can be perfectly sound and ready to work, and you have to make an appointment and wait to work that horse out for the state vet. So that's something else that needs to be addressed.
That's why she needs you at the she should call you every morning for a 2-hour conference call. Before you go on, let me just answer a couple of these.
Do you see my shirt, Larry? Do you see? Here, let me show you already. Take that thing off and let me take the question off and let me show them. This is who I am. Bad boy Bob. And because I speak the truth like you do, and I try to do the right thing. And if I'm wrong, I'll tell you I'm wrong. If I don't know an answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer.
Can you answer this question here?
What
was the decision of the Fifth Circuit?
Found it unconstitutional. ICER is unconstitutional. And if you
answer this question here, why do racetracks
go to the HBPA, and they've got a ton of information and they've got some really good attorneys, and we're going to see where it goes.
Can you answer this one? Why do racetracks keep changing their names? Parks was originally Keystone and then Philadelphia Park. Different owners, they just changed the name?
No. They built the casino, and it was Philadelphia Park, and they changed the name to Parks, P-A-R-X. But if you come to Parks Racetrack, keep the memories alive. You'll see our water truck with Philadelphia Park rushing as fast as it can around the racetrack because it can't hold enough water. But there's no problem there. And trainers have been complaining about this now for 20 years.
All right, let me get a couple of these.
Is your computer 30 years old? Your cell phone? Your car? But we only get the best. So, hopefully it's been Parks now for 20 years.
All right. Eric writes, Larry, why don't I see, this is just a question I haven't done. Larry, why don't I see many black drivers in harness racing, and opinion on who has been the best you've seen? There's been a few black drivers. Lou Williams was one of the best. And there were a couple even up in Monticello. They were
Bubba Wilson.
There were a couple of good ones. Why don't many come into the game? I don't know. I have no idea. But the ones that do come in, I remember years back, 40, 50, 60 years ago, they were almost every groom was black. A lot of black trainers. The ones that were very interested, they went on. When they died off, the black grooms were taken over by Spanish grooms. The black trainers were taken over by Spanish trainers. Why? I don't know. I can't. Back then, I had my own troubles. All right, let me see. Let me just get one or two more, and then we'll go back to. Let's see what this says. Larry, is it true horses enjoy having cats or dogs in the stalls with them? Does it mean many times that these horses are put in? Some racetracks have 10 by 10 stalls, some have 8 by 10 stalls, some have 12 by 12 stalls, and some of them don't have gates or screens with oaks in them where they keep their head out. So just picture a 1,200-pound horse with a 10 by 10 stall, and in there for 23 and a half hours a day. The first thing that happens is ulcers form. The next thing that happens is they develop bad habits like digging, cribbing, pouring. on and on and on. And then they develop mental problems that the trainers, nobody even knows about. And what they do, and some develop very bad habits. They start to stall walk, which means they just walk in circles around the stall 24 hours a day. And them horses that have that problem, they get goats, and they put the goat in with them, or they put a dog or cat, something. They hang balls or tires from the ceiling that they could play with, because when you come to look at it, I could give you 10 real good reasons why they should never, ever, ever race horses and never put them in a box stall. But I won't. Uh, but them are the reasons. So it's true that it calms a lot of horses down. I was at a farm just today where they have where there's no way. I proved the point to the guy I was with. They had one horse, two horses in complete box stalls with bars, but they had a little opening that was about 2 feet wide and 2 feet high, that they could, instead of opening the door, they can open this thing and pour the feed in. Well, I opened one, and immediately the horse put his head right out. And I showed my friend, I said, see this horse with his head right out? See his ears? They're wide up, wide, straight up. Happy, just got instantly happy from being a little bitch in the back of the stall with his ears pinned to come right out. The stall next door was closed in. That horse had his nose in between the bars with his ears pinned back. I opened that thing, his ears pinned right back up. So it's sad that they have to be there. At the Meadowlands, what everybody used to do at the Meadowlands, including myself, was they had wooden planks in between each stall, and what we would take out, we would try to put the geldings together, stable next to, and take out 4 or 5 boards where the horses could actually look, put their head right over each stall and be in the other horse's stall. And you come in the afternoons, and you'd see the horse in one stall had his head over the other stall, the other one had his head over in his stall. They were head to head, side by side, like in a herd, and that's what we used to do. And them horses brighten right up, and it just changed their whole attitude. And so I can go on and give a million reasons it should be there, but they are, because we follow the option. But anyway, let me get to the question. Let's see. Let's see. What's this one say here? Been just listening. Hello, Larry Rolla. Hello. Hiya. Hiya. Okay, Bob, you can continue. And if any other questions, I missed a couple already, but go ahead.
Let me change gears for a moment, if I can. One of the things that we've been doing, especially at parks in Philadelphia this year, I don't know how many of you remember Smarty Jones, but this is the 20th anniversary of him winning 2/3 of the Triple Crown and missing out on immortality by 1 length in the Belmont. And for any of you that have been up to Saratoga to the Hall of Fame, everybody is certain that Smarty Jones is in the Hall of Fame. Well, he's not. And we're making a concerted effort on behalf of Mrs. Chapman, who campaigned Smarty Jones. And I would just like to tell the audience a little bit about Smarty Jones. And when you hear it, we're going to go back to City Hall and politics again. He's never even been nominated by the nomination committee in the Hall of Fame. So let me just refresh their minds. Smarty Jones burst on the scene, won his first race, and then reeled off 7 straight stake victories. He came to Belmont having won 8 straight races going for the Triple Crown. The crowd at Belmont that day was 123,000 people. That is a record that will never be broken. Secretariat affirmed Aladar. No one ever had 123,000 people come. And it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to win the Triple Crown. Tom Durkin, the great race caller from Aqueduct, secretly I spoke to him, thought that Smarty Jones was going to annihilate Secretariat winning the Belmont Stakes by 31 and a half lengths, and took some red tape and counted off 31 and a half lengths so that he would be able to tell the audience that he just annihilated the record. Smarty Jones won over $7 million in 2004. His win in the Preakness by 11 and a half lengths is the largest margin of victory ever in the Preakness. For those of you that follow Beyer, his Beyer number in the Preakness was 118. To put things in comparison, Justify had a 97 Beyer, and that's when the track is even, souped up better. And American Pharaoh had a 101. His 118, some people consider the fastest race ever run in American history. And those two horses are in the Triple Crown. And Smarty Jones, who won 8 out of 9 races and lost the stakes to Birdstone by a length, is not. Another fact they don't know about Smarty Jones, every jockey in that race came after Stuart Elliott, who was a local parks jockey. And in a 1.5 mile race, have you ever heard of a thoroughbred horse running a quarter mile midway through the race in 22 seconds and change? We're talking 1.5 miles. Smarty Jones did. And he got beat at the wire by 1 length, 33 feet. And if he had won that, they may have considered him among the greatest horses in history. And for reasons nobody can understand, he has never even been nominated to the Hall of Fame and got past the committee. And we're making a concerted effort on behalf of Philadelphia. And if Sylvester Stallone wants to make a pitch, yo, America, introduce Smarty Jones, the people's horse. And the story of how he even got to the races is amazing. Before he ran his first race, he ran up in the starting gate, fractured his eye. They were going to take the eye out, his head. Patty Hogan, the renowned surgeon in New Jersey, saved his life. And the rest is history. And here's a horse who won 8 consecutive races, 7 stakes, over $7 million, and lost the Belmont Stakes by 1 length. And for reasons nobody knows, he's not in the Hall of Fame, and he was America's horse. So,
well, you know what you should do at Philadelphia? You should take a big picture of Marty Jones with a little history underneath, and right next to Smarty Jones, put Pete Rose's picture, because they both got screwed.
Yep. And Pete Rose was a great one, probably one of the best competitors, baseball players I've ever seen in my life. And isn't it amazing? Baseball promotes gambling morning, noon, and night, but because he gambled, nobody ever proved that he ever bet against his team. Just ask Ray Fosse in the All-Star game where he barreled into him and ended his career. That's how much Pete Rose wanted to win. And I've met him a few times, Larry. Hell of a nice guy. And
he'd come to the racetrack all the time.
Oh, he loved the horses. He loved the ponies. And
see if you can answer this question. Can you see it?
I can see it. Okay, the secret's out. Dixieland Belle. Dixieland Belle is one of my 2-year-olds. She was bred to More Than Ready. Her dam won a graded stake. That's Dixie Serenade. She's being trained by Mike Trombetta and his fine young assistant, Chris Arrow. And we may have a surprise announcement that she's going to make her first start at Presque Isle on, I believe, October 14th in a $100,000 stake. And she was up at Saratoga, and she opened some eyes there, and she's a pretty nice 2-year-old, but I don't want to tout your audience to bet her first time out. But she did work this past weekend against a 3-year-old filly who ran once at Colonial Downs in a race that went in 56 and change, which is pretty fast on the turf. And the horse was a fast closing third, and that was against the boys at Colonial. And Dixieland Belle and that horse worked together because we wanted to see what we have. And yes, the secret's out. Dixieland Belle would buy that horse. after the finish line and galloped out strong. She looks to me that she might want more than 6 furlongs, but she's a really nice horse, and we look forward to a very, very nice campaign with her.
I don't know if you want to answer this question or not, because I could answer it, but I want to see if you want to say anything about this question.
Yes, I'll answer it. John Service is one of my board members. He did a fantastic job with Smarty Jones, and you're confusing John Service with his brother, Jason Service, who was indicted and was sent to jail, along with Jorge Navarro. It's not John Service. John Service is an excellent trainer and a very nice man.
Very well said. Okay, so far we don't have any more questions. We've been on for an hour and 20 minutes. Bob, we can end it right now unless you have something else to say.
All I want to say is thank you all for tuning in. Larry has had a wonderful life. It's been my honor to know Larry.
I have to thank you very much for that. Somebody told me that they said, do you ever look at it? Because the only place you could buy my book right from the time I wrote it is on Amazon. They says, you want to go in all the store? I says, no, I just want one copy. I have to send it to California. But they says it's automatically going to go on Amazon. I never look. I heard it sold thousands and thousands of copies, but I that's from other friends telling me. A friend of mine called me up about 3 months ago, and he said, did you ever look at the, I keep getting 5 stars and I keep getting all positive reviews. And one review was like a half a page, and it was the review that you wrote about my book after reading my book. So I never thank you for that, but I thank you because it's very good, because now I looked at the reviews and I must have 40, 50 reviews on there, and they're all positive. I never looked at it. But anyway, thank you for that that review that you gave.
The book is a great read. And if anybody hasn't bought that book, I suggest you do. And Larry, little rascal, I didn't know anything about your past when I first met you. I can only tell you I've known you about 30 years, and I find you to be sincere, honorable. You're a man of your word. You have exceptional character, and you should be very proud of everything you've done in life. And we all make some mistakes. None of us are Jesus. And
I thank you for that. I thank you for that. And just I want to say a couple of things. I'm going to say one thing, then I'm going to read a question that I had last week. The one thing I want to say is that my whole life, I didn't want nothing but racing cars. And that was my whole life until I was introduced to horse racing, where because I had a room full of trophies from racing my stock cars and dragsters when I was 14, 15, 16. When I was introduced to horse racing, I got involved with that, and I never left the farm. And that's all I wanted to do the rest of my life. So I really enjoyed it. Along the way, somebody accused me of something I didn't do. Powerful guy put me on the wrong path. I did what I had to do. And then anyway, here's the question that I got. Larry, do you fear God and the afterlife? I just always wondered this when corrupt young people are now in older ages, and time to the next phase to be judged is just around the corner. Now, he's talking about me. So he says, I wonder if Sammy the Bull Gravano wakes up in cold sweats knowing he will come back as a deer that jumps into a barbed wire fence, and is stuck there for 10 days to rot and get eaten up by other animals slowly. Just curious if you ever considered this, or do you even consider yourself a bad person in your total younger life? So after every nice thing that you said about me. There's people out there that know of my younger life, and I gave them an answer that lasted about 20 minutes last week. I'm not going to go through it now, but I will just say this to the people that didn't hear last week. I I never hurt anybody on purpose, and I helped a lot more people than I ever hurted, um, to the tune of millions of dollars. And when I get to the pearly gates and they open the book on me, um, there is no doubt in my mind I'll be up there with my mother and father. So that's it. So thank you, Bob, for your kind words. And it's just sad because a lot of these people, they write these things without knowing my whole life story. And there was a point in my life where I had to turn myself into a mutt. You asked me this 15 times in the last few times that we talked. When a bully hits you, what do you do? What do you have to do? You have to hit him back. When a bully who happens to be extremely politically powerful and the owner of a racetrack accuses you of doing something that you did not do without a hearing, don't even want to talk to you, and just destroys your whole life because of his powerful political connections and is the owner of a racetrack, what are you supposed to do? Turn yourself into a fucking mutt? Turn the other cheek? Well, I have a problem. I never did that in my life. If I'm right, I don't ever turn the other cheek. And I don't care if you're 10 feet tall, I'm coming at you head first. And that's the way I feel about it. I did what I had to do the time I had to do it. And if guys like this, and all he wanted was the question answered, and I don't know if he wrote it sarcastically or if it was a legitimate question, but all they have to do is listen to what I did, where I did it, and why I did it. I wouldn't be getting these kind of things. And I will say this: I've been harness racing and thoroughbred racing for 60 years. More. Like I said, like I told, I think you, I got many kills in both divisions of racing. I don't think I have one enemy on any racetrack that I was ever at, and I was at almost all of them. Um, most know my life story. Most know what I did and why I did it. And I would just end by this without saying too much. You just have to kind of read between the lines. If anybody out there was ever in my shoes and had the chance to save your mother's life and your life, would you have taken the same road I took, or would you have done what some of you suggest that I would have done back in the day? And I can only say this: if some of you says, "Well, you had a choice," yeah, I had a choice to do what I did, or just turn the other cheek, let my mother blow up in the house, and everything else. Well, for them people, I say, you might consider yourself a better man than me, but I'll just stay. I'm good. I'm strong. I'm healthy, and I got a lot of support, especially the years I was in a lot of trouble. That's as much as I'm going to say about that. So anyway, Bob, let me see. Maybe we got another question. None of these. What's this say? Yeah, how about this one, Bob? Bob is a great guest and a great asset for racing. That's very nice. There you got a fan club already. Just like Joe Garlino. He has a whole fan club here. Everybody, he's very good. He's going to be coming on probably next week sometime. Let's see what this says, because I put all the ones on, even the bad ones. None of these reviews talk about the great work you have done about standardbred. This guy Matt Gray, he writes in a lot. Sometimes they're sarcastic, so I can't tell what he does. He talks about the great work I have done about standardbred's feet. Standardbreds. Well, you know that it's some of them stories are in my book. Some of them are not in the book, but anybody that was in the thoroughbred business and in the standardbred business know of what I did for before glue-on shoes were even invented, and before quarter crack patches were even invented. I was doing it. In 1959, I patched my first quarter crack and put on my first glue-on shoes with a kit that I bought from Sears and Roebuck called the fiberglass kit that I used to fix my cars with. Yeah, I did a lot of things, and I said this afternoon. I think I said it to the guy at the farm. I says, I'll bet you 1 year stall rent for 10 stalls if what I say right now is not true. Take 100 horses that you have here on the farm, and I'll take a hoof tester. And I guarantee you that at least 90% of the 100 will have a problem with their feet, whether because they have a corn, a crack, or a nail, a quick. And he wouldn't take that bet. And you know what? I'd win that bet. So glue-on shoes. You buy the rundown plates. When I was in the business, the Queen's plate or a regular aluminum shoe for a thoroughbred, they had 4 nails on them. The last nail hole was right at right probably an inch before the heel started. That's where it starts to get live. And so the whole back part of the whole the third of the foot is all live. Today, what they do is after they used up all the nail holes in the middle, and there's no more foot to put a nail hole, or it just cracked away because the thoroughbred's feet, they have a very thin wall, and that's why the thoroughbred nails are half the size of standardbred nails and half as thick, because they can't go up that high. So you got to go up, maybe if you go up a half an inch, that's a lot. And after you go in the same spot 2 or 3 months, there's no more solid foot to put a nail. So they start cheating, and they start going forward more, which really don't hold the shoe on, and they start going back by the heel. Or they start trying to go a little higher. That's where they get quit. And I recognized this a long, long time ago, and that's why every horse that I put down, and Bob Hutt knows of one. We talked about it. Good Scout. He was founded, this and that. I put a pair of glue-on shoes on him. He had real bad feet, flat feet. I put glue-on shoes with double rim pad underneath to keep the sole off the ground, and he won by open lens his first race back after a few months. So, yes, if the question was sarcastic, that's the answer, and if the question was a serious one, that's the answer. Now, we'll go to another question. Detroit Zicky, nice jacket, Larry. Yeah, well, it's a little chilly out today, so this is it's in the closet with the long sleeve shirt, so I just grabbed it. Bob, let me see what this says. This Jesse Black keeps writing this thing, and I'm not gonna put it up. It's something, I'll put it up. It's Tuesday night is Larry's birthday. Please join us and wish him a happy birthday, because he wrote 15 times over here. All right, Mac Gray. See, here's another one, Mac Gray, the guy that. See, I read the comments. You were known as Dr. Strolls. See, now, is that a serious comment? I don't know. All right.
Take it as a compliment, Larry.
It's a compliment?
Yeah, take it as a compliment.
Okay. Alex says, great show, Larry. Thank you. Wait a minute. Wait a second. What's this one say? Rick Simon, Joe Molino's coming on the show next week. Let me tell you something about Joey Molino. First of all, everybody accuses him of being the mob boss of Philadelphia. His father was. His father was involved, heavily involved. He was born right into it. But Joey Molino went to jail for a lot of years, maybe 20 years, maybe even more. Probably half of that time or a third of that time he spent in a hole all by himself. When they put a guy in his cell that started asking him the questions, he says, "Send me down in the hole again. I don't want to be in a cell with anybody." An extremely stand-up guy that was born into that life, and just no matter if they gave him life, and he went many trials for life sentence. He would have did life. He's a stand up guy, and he lets everybody know it. And his show right now, the show, this they call it the Joey Skinny Molino Show, something like that, with Little Snuff. It's the fastest growing podcast on in that genre, the mob genre. And what he does is his thing is he exposes all the rats that ratted on everybody, and that's his whole thing. But Joey Molino was a jockey. He was a jockey, and he raced it in New England. And I don't know for how many years, but he was a jockey. His good friend of another jockey who was a good friend of mine, and but it would I would love to have him on the show. He's quite a character. He reminds me of a kid that used to work for me called Frankie. And if you watch the show, the word was fuck. So we just called him, because I had three guys, Frankie, that worked for me. So we just said fucking Frankie, because every other word was fuck. Joey Molino's the same way. He talks just like he talked on the street corner growing up. He's a very, very entertaining, very, very smart guy. And he lives down in Florida. He does his podcast, and he has unbelievable guests on. The last interview Pete Rose ever did was on Joey Molino's show. I believe it was the last one he ever did. He had him on a show about a month ago. And Joey Molino, he don't go on many shows. I doubt very much he would go on my show, because he hates government witnesses and stool pigeons with such a passion that years ago, a year ago, and he was a government informant. But with me, there's two sides to every story, and there's a reason. I mean, if you get given a life sentence for something that you didn't do, and you were told that there's going to be you're going to be dead by the morning, and you were given a voice, a recording to listen to, and you have a newborn baby at home, a wife, a family. What are you supposed to do? You're in jail for something you didn't do. You're in jail because of another stool pigeon, so you hate stool pigeons. But they think that you're one or whatever. Plus, they're not taking care of your family. Then nobody paid your attorney fees. Nobody helped. Nothing. You have a wife and kids starving to death at home. These are things that are important to me. I've been there. I know what it's like for people to make decisions. The whole story. I know what it's like. Like I said, I lived on a park bench for a long time. I've been to these Mickey Mouse racetracks, sleeping on dirt floors and tack rooms with no heat and electric. I know what it's like when nobody wants to listen, and nobody cares, and they just make up their mind that this is it, and they constantly talk about the bad stuff. They don't talk about the 100 some odd kids that I saved that are still alive today, that were diagnosed with weeks to live with. They don't talk about them kids that I saved. They don't talk about the drivers that I saved because I failed to cooperate during investigation. Did I know what they did? I knew what they did. At the time, I had 7 homes that I lost. I had 80 racehorses that I lost. I had a training facility that I lost, and $2 million in the bank that it cost me to defend the case that I had nothing to do with. No horses at the racetrack. There's at Monticello. No horses. Wasn't racing that day. I was in the clubhouse having dinner with my mother, and a fellow driver came over to me. He said, "If you're going to be around for the last race, bet these numbers." Kid that used to work for me that now was one of the leading drivers up there, and it turned out to be a bad race. And the racing commission called me in, even though I used to go there only on Sunday to take my mother for lunch there, because there was no other place to go on a Sunday for lunch except the Jewish deli. So they called me in a month after that race, and they asked me, they said, "Look, we have witnesses that saw this particular driver who was the favorite in that race come over to your table and handed you a piece of paper. What was on the paper?" And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And they says, "Well, we're having an investigation, and your license is it's not a right, it's a privilege. And one of the rules on the back is that racing commission has an investigation. You must cooperate your investigation." And I says, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about. It's been a month ago. I don't know what you're talking about." And they says, "You're hereby suspended for life." And because of that, I was not wrong. I did nothing wrong. I wasn't in a race. People can come and talk to me, and I fought. I fought until I lost all my houses. Then I sold the training center to fight for my appeals. And by the time it was over, in 2.5 years, 3 years, I lost $2.5 million. All my good owners that stuck up for me and got me to that point, and was living on a park bench. So I know what it's like from both sides of the fence. I know what I did, I know why I did it, and I know how I did it. So sometimes instead of getting these, and every once in a while, that's why I go right down the line. I put up all of these comments, no matter what they are. And I think since I started this podcast, I invited 3 people that had negative things to say about me that obviously didn't know the whole story, and invited them to come here. If you were local, I'd send an Uber. If you were far away, I'd send a plane ticket. Not one showed up. And so for you, those of you that are out there, and I really appreciate you watching this thing, but try to know the whole story before you accuse me, because I really believe that the worst critics out there against me, if they knew the whole story and were in my shoes at that time, you would have did the same thing I did. And that's all I'll say about that. We got a couple of more questions. Don't go away, Bob. Let me see what this says. let me just go. There's 3 or 4 here. I'll start with this one. How about if a horse goes down, make that track a crime scene until that area of the track is investigated? Well, that's exactly what Bob did with the course. And unfortunately, the owners of the racetrack, they wanted to race on that racetrack, and he had no choice but to call the same people that are probably going to destroy the industry, but they were the only ones that had the power to close the turf course and save horses' lives. And that's what he did. He did what he had to do, and that's what men do. Men do what they have to do when they have to do it. And that's what a man does. And that's why before I condemn anybody or have anything bad to say anybody, I need to know both sides of the story. Because there's assholes, there's jerk-offs, and there's scumbags. And you got to know both sides of the story. And sometimes I wonder, do assholes know they're assholes? Maybe they can't even help themselves. Maybe they, I don't know. But you got to know both sides. Okay. Let's see. Let's see what this one says. Rick Simon, Larry, you are a good man, no doubt. Thank you very much. Larry, Matt Gray, very good jockey. I'm sure he's talking about Molino, because I think I have a video of him winning a race. Okay. He races with Julie Crone. Let's see this. Joey races at Laurel. Well, he did back then. He's not riding anymore. What's this say? Look at the comments on Bob's last show. All the comments were good. So Matt, I don't. What's this one say? Larry, Fat Tony Salerno was spotted at Hazel Park Raceway in the early 80s. Your thoughts? I know he was up there. I was trying to sell Hazel Park at the time. My veterinary friend and one of the top vets in the country, Joe Zarelli, his father was part of that Detroit mob. And you like the way I said Zanzuki, huh, Bob?
Well,
But I meant
well,
Zarelli.
they don't know what you're talking about. Frank Zanzuki, that's when I really got to know Larry, the New Jersey racing commissioner at the time. Larry served his time for 6 years, got his license back. He reapplied with 2 thoroughbreds at Monmouth Park, and Zanzuki suspended him again for the same thing. He served his time 6 years. And that's when I got involved and called the governor. And eventually Larry did get his license back. But you talk about politicians and political abuse. It wasn't right what they did to Larry. And that's really when I got to know you, Larry, without knowing anything about his past. And the story you told about Monticello was exactly what you said to me 30 years ago.
Yeah,
Not a word is true.
that's the truth. But you know, the funny thing, Bob, and I never told you that. Well, I haven't seen you in like 30, 40 years, whatever it was, just until just recently when I saw that comment about the book. But I asked 2 wise guys, 2 mob guys. One was a boss who was 90 in his 90s, and the other one was a young coming boss, 2 different families. And I asked both of them the same question. Would you have given up them drivers that fixed that race if you were me and had what I had, 7 million, 2 million, 7 homes, a training center, 80 horses in training, 2 million in the bank, and 7 owners that were worth, one of them, Kadish alone, was worth $1 billion, and I could have got anything I want. I gave all of that up, not to rat on these 4 guys. One owner, it was Aaron Wagman. He said, Larry, give each of them $200,000. They haven't earned $200,000 in their whole life. Giving them $200,000 each, and they'll get a 6-month suspension, and we'll go right back. Because what you're going to do, you're going to hurt me, who I have millions invested, and you're going to hurt the other 6 owners that you have that supported you through all the rough times, that got you from 1978 sleeping on a park bench to where you are today 5 years later. If you don't tell the commission what they want and maintain and keep everything that we worked so hard, and you did too, you're going to destroy yourself and us. And I just couldn't do it. So I asked these 2 wise. The 94-year-old guy says, you did the right thing, kid. You did the right thing. I says, but I have nothing. I have nothing. At this point in my life, I have nothing. Yeah, but you're a stand-up guy. Who gives a fuck? They still don't pick up the phone calls. Who cares? I called the kid. I got him married for $5,000. I bought him a house with the girl. I had to get him a citizenship. He come from Canada. He was a good groom, and I didn't want him to get deported because the immigration was raiding all the racetracks back then. So I got him a wife. I gave her $5,000. I said, stay married to him for 2 years to become a citizen. Then you can get divorced. I'll give you another $5,000. If you stay married, the house I'm going to put you in, I'll sign it over to you, and I'll put 2 cars in the garage. And if you decide to stay married, he decided to stay married. In 1984, I got in that bit of a trouble because I wouldn't cooperate your investigation. I called the guy up, and I says, Gillis, I says, I'm on a park bench. I need a few $1,000s. And he says to me, let me ask my wife. And as fucking hungry and as wet as I was, I hung up the phone. I just couldn't believe it. And I'll just tell you one more story. At the time, the lowest point in my life, same park bench, 2 days later, soaking wet, rained all night. I call up a friend of mine. I says, Tommy D. Maria, that pistol that you have, bring it over here in the corner of right up the road from Meadowlands Racetrack. He says, what are you going to do? I said, bring the gun. About a half hour later, who pulls up? Another friend of mine, Joe Murata. He's getting in the car. I get in the car. He says, what are you doing? And I says, Joe, he says, Tommy called me up. I says, Joe, I can't do this no more. He says, we're going to go to Angelo's. I'll buy you lunch. I want to talk to you. He says, remember in 1981 when you were going crazy and I won the cane pace. I won a lot of money that year. And I wanted to have a Christmas party for all my friends, all my owners, their families. I just wanted to have a big gala affair. But I couldn't find a place. I found Madison Square Garden, but I couldn't find rooms for all the people that were coming out of town. I kept looking and looked. Finally, I called up Bobby Parker, who owned the Concord Hotel. And I had horses with him, and I knew him well. And I says, Bobby, look, every year you close your hotel for 10 days for general cleanup. I want you to do me a favor. I'm going to have a party. I'll rent your whole hotel, including your staff, for 3 days. And he said, okay. He says, how many people? He says, my list is 3,100 people coming from all over the country. He says, I can't have 3,100 people. He says, you got to cut it down to right around 1,000. And Joe Murata, who took me to Angelo, says, and we were at the table already, he says, you remember that? And I says, yeah. You remember who helped you cut that list down? It took you 2 days to cut the list down because you thought you had 31 best friends? It was me. I helped you list down to 1,100 people. He says, do you know that party cost you $1 million, close to $1 million? It was 3 days party I've ever been to. I says, do you know that if you and you thought you had 3,100 good friends, if you had to have a party for your true friends, all you'd need is this table right here. We were at a table for 4, and he says, and they might be 1 seat empty. And that's when reality sets in. And in a way, it wakes it when you hit these peaks and valleys. And I was lucky because I could adjust to millions and mansions or park benches and eating out of dumpsters. I can adjust to that instantly. But that really hurt when the people that you helped got to ask their wife if they could lend you money. People that you took out of the gutter and put into real good positions. And you start thinking, and the sad thing about that whole story, and leave me out of it, is that the people that have money really know who their true friends are until you, and when you really need them, that means you hit rock bottom. And that's when you find out that people that used to send fucking jet planes for you now don't even pick up your phone call. And I have a plaque that I made. When you have nothing in common with people that can help, they don't help. And that's the truth. And that's what's sad about people with money their whole lives that think they're well liked by and I come up with a saying just out of the clear blue when somebody says to me, I'm only saying this for the sake of the story. It's true. You must in fact, you said something like this today, but this is what they said, and this was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You must have had 1 million girls. You're really a good-looking guy. And you know what I said to him? This was in 1987. I says, a lot of people were telling me that, and I used to think that because of until I ran out of money. And then the fucking good-looking girls weren't there no more. It had nothing to do with my looks. It had to do with the money. And these are all the things you learn when you have the peaks and valleys in your life, and you lead the kind of life I led from movie stars, senators, to presidents, to how the fuck. I saw an out and out criminal get a presidential pardon because the envelope was thick enough. Anyway, go ahead, Bob.
Larry, I have to correct something before the audience gets the wrong idea. I didn't say that to Larry today. My fiance got in the car and looked at a picture of Larry in the paddock with me on Wednesday, and she said, "He's a hell of a good-looking guy. The women must have loved him in his day." And I had her tell you that. I don't want people to think that I said it to you.
No, you're right. But I'm just saying that a conversation like that happened in the 80s. And, if these guys that have these beautiful looking girls on their arm, it reflects, you can almost say, Rolla. And then instead of going to Peter Luger's or Spark Steakhouse, you go into Roadside or one of them places, and then the girls disappear. All of a sudden, they become busy. So that's life. That's life. And I'm sure most.
And Larry, I want to say something. Alan Seawald, we both loved Alan. Too soon. When we started out, our first racehorse, I told the 10 partners we had, there's a million ways to lose a race and only one way to win. So don't expect to win the first time out. Well, immediately I was a liar. We won our first race ever. I told them the same thing in the second race with another horse, and we won that race too. So I was a liar again. But Alan taught me something. He said, "Bob, when you're winning in racing, everybody wants to pat you on the back. You're the hero. You're a great guy. You don't know who your true friends are until you lose. Watch those same people that patted you on the back and were always there when you were on top. They're going to desert you." It was almost like a prophecy from Jesus, but it turned out Alan was right. And he also said this to me: racing is a game of highs and lows, peaks and valleys. Never get too high when you win, and never despair too low when you lose. And basically, Larry, what you just said is the story of life. And we've all been there at one time. You don't find out who your true friends are until you're at your very lowest. And you can count them on one hand. And that's just the way I approach life. And I'm so.
There's a lot of life lessons that you can learn through life. The sad part is that most of these life lessons that you try to teach the kids today, it's almost like trying to keep somebody healthy. It's almost impossible to get somebody to do something that's preventative. They all wait until they wind up in jail, or they all wait until they get sick. But you say, if you take this lane, you're going to wind up in jail. They take the lane. And then after it's too late, and I went down that lane when I was a young kid, when I was 15, 16, 17. I don't believe there was a kid in the world that was better and did more things than I did between the ages of 13 and maybe 16, 17, till my brother took me to Tommy Lucchese, the boss of the Lucchese mob today. They still carry his name. And when he told me that your mother is a good woman and she's my friend, and you're breaking her heart with all your nickel and dime bullshit, you want to be a tough guy? You want to be a tough guy? You want to see how tough you are? I'll put you with a couple of guys, see how tough you are. But I'd rather you respect your mother, learn what you're doing to her, and change your ways. And if you want to change your ways, I will help you in any way that I can. And every problem you have today, including the one that you're in right now, and it was a serious one, will go away. At that time, when I realized that that I cared for nobody but myself. I wanted what I wanted when I wanted it, and I didn't care who I just did what I had to do. So anyway, these people had heard, they probably heard these stories 1,000 times between reading my book, listening to my first 30, 40 podcasts, and every once in a while, see, the bad part is every once in a while you get a question like this, and from somebody that didn't hear all the other stuff, and you have to answer it, and probably 60% of the people listening heard that story, and every once in a while I get a question. It's the same old bullshit that you're talking about, but you got to answer the questions. Anyway, Bob, there's a guy here asked me, what's this question here, Larry? Did you know Herbert Sperling, Jewish gangster out of New York? No, I didn't. In the years, just so you know, in the years, very, very bad people. If you take the baddest guy in New York, and he had to find somebody to do something really bad that he himself didn't even want to do, that guy that he picked was the guy that I owed the money to, and it was tough and it was scary. People say, weren't you afraid? Weren't you frightened? Weren't you, and naturally you're afraid, because if you weren't afraid, you wouldn't pay. So naturally you're afraid, but you're on such a schedule that you have to make these things happen, that you don't think of it. It's just something that you have to do. Today's Friday. By tomorrow, I have to have $12,000 more. You got to get it. You just got to get it. You don't think of nothing else. You don't think, if I don't get it, you got to get it. You got to get it, because there is no doubt what the alternative is. The alternative is death. That's it. That's it. So you got to get it. So I didn't deal with many people. I did my own thing in my own little my own little circle that I was in. So outside of Nicky Barnes and one or two other people, I really, really never got involved. But I could tell you one thing: I know one or two Jewish gangsters, and the Jewish people, regardless what anybody says, the toughest people I know, some of the toughest street fighters were Jewish. Some of the sharpest minds in the mob were Jewish associates. Uh, they're nobody to fool with. Very, 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 very sharp people. There's one guy, I should remember his name. I hope it's not this guy. He's going to come on my podcast, and he was the guy whose father started all the slot machines with Meyer Lansky. Unbelievable story, but I don't think that's the name. He was supposed to come on my show, but when the Israel got in that war, he has a lot of family over there, and he says, I not right now. My mind is there, but now it looks like Israel is going to be okay. I'm going to call him up, and I'm going to have him on. Very, very interesting guys that dealt with every mob guy, from Lucky Luciano to Carlo Gambino to Meyer Lansky, to all. Very, very interesting guy. And I contacted him when I first started the podcast, because in the beginning, it quickly switched over, because my association with the mob and my involvement with the mob is so limited. It was only limited to this one guy, this Italian guy, Cabert, that I owed this money to. And so I know all the rest of them. When you're in the racehorse business, and word gets around really quick, because besides me going out every night to a nightclub, guess who owned all the nightclubs in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s? All the mob guys. Where were they in the daytime? At all the racetracks. And they were at the Trotters at night. So I had thoroughbreds in the day, Trotters at night, nightclubs at night. I was surrounded by all of them. I had horses with John Gotti and two or three other mob figures that I don't have to mention, because two of them are still around. But other than that, they're friends. They could, what they do for a living is none of my business. They're friends. They treated me good, and one or two of them saved me a few times. So no, I didn't know Herbert Sperling. But if you keep listening, J Dog, you're going to see this Jewish fella that I'm going to have on, and he lives right near me. And he says to me, he says, the only thing I would like is if you take me for pasta vazul. So I found a restaurant. In fact, Il Villaggio, as they say, makes the best pasta vazul. So I'm going to call him up now because Israel looks like it's in pretty good shape, and I'm going to ask him to come on. I'll take him for his meal, and he'll be sitting right next to me, and he will tell one of the most interesting stories I ever heard, and I heard a lot of stories. But this guy goes way back, and he goes right into the casinos. So the answer is no, I don't know that guy. Here's one more. I hope you're not falling asleep.
No, I'm awake. I'm just listening.
Corruption in horse racing will never ever go away, just like boxing. And the NFL, the refs decide who wins. Well, I have to tell you this. I know, and I will say this. I'll tell you who it was because he's gone. Everybody involved in the story is gone. Aaron Wagman, who owned Wildwood Jeb and maybe another 20 or 30 horses that I had, he was the guy that was fixing all the college games in the 50s and 60s, I believe. And he went to jail. In fact, I have a picture of him with handcuffs on. He went to jail. When he got out of jail, he started a business called Photo Promotions. And it was one of them things where you for $9.95 they take your baby's picture, and then you come back, you leave a $5 deposit. When you come back, he says, "Oh, for $9.95 you get this beautiful portrait on a wooden plaque, but for $29.95 you can have these three poses. For $49.95 you can have all the pictures on wooden plaques and everything else." He was in every major store that every discount store, from Zayas to the only store he wasn't in was Kmart's, and that's another story because they got him into Kmart, which made me $3 million the first minute I got him in there. So he couldn't get, just got out of jail, but he loved the horse business. Davey Handel introduces me to him, and he says Aaron is willing to spend millions on horses. He loves horse racing, he loves gambling. So I said, yeah, but he can't get licensed, So he says, no, he's going to put the horses under his lawyer's name, Jeffrey Weinberg, I think. And the stable name was Big Willie Farms. I says, okay. So that's what we did. It was all under his name. Well, one day he comes in with a big envelope, big brown manila envelope. And he hands it to a guy, and I can't mention his name because he's in heavyweight in politics. And I think his brother is still very involved. The next thing I know is Aaron says, I got a presidential pardon, take me to get licensed. So I'm well aware of all of these things, from corruption in horse racing to corruption in boxing to corruption in when I was very friendly with a referee, a professional basketball referee, and he says, "Look, you shouldn't bet, but if you're gonna bet, always bet over. Just bet over all the time." And let me know. And what they do is, and I haven't bet in a sport game. I haven't watched a sporting event since 1971. So that's 50 years ago. So, but he says to me, always bet over and let me know. I says, well, what are you going to do? He says, I'm going to call every foul. And this way the clock stops. They get on the line. They throw these free throws. They got a shot to make 2 or 3 points, 2 points. Without the clock moving, they could score point after point after point after point just by calling fouls. And so at a very young age, I knew about the refs, how the mob bought the vets, the referees in boxing, the mob controlled boxing in the 40s and 50s and 60s. I'm well aware of that. I was involved in all of that, not on purpose, but on the fringes. And even though I had my own thing going, when you're sitting at a table at Jack Dempsey's place and opposite you is Frank Costello and Eddie Arcaro and this and that and everything else, and you're just there because a friend of yours knows that you're a good kid and this you're going to get this and this and this and this. You hear a lot of things. In fact, I'm going to tell you a real quick story, then we'll end it. We were at that that famous bar on the corner. I forgot the name of it. And Eddie Arcaro says to my friend who was bringing me to all of these places, buy Polaroid stock. I don't know about the stock market. Well, that was when Polaroid came out with that thing. You take a picture and the picture comes out automatically without having it. And the Polaroid stock zoomed up. Everybody made millions, and I didn't even know what he was talking about. So yeah, I was around all of them guys. I lived a very exciting life, and that's the reason why I wrote the book. I was begged to write the book by all the kids I grew up with. Some of them are mobsters, some of them are police officers. And when I wrote the book, I called all of these people up and says, "Tell me a Larry Rolla story." And when I was done, I was at the track the other day sitting with Bob. Bob introduces me to this kid. And the kid, he says, "You remember him?" And I says, "No, I don't." And so he says to the kid, "Do you remember Larry Rolla?" He says, "I remember him, but most of all, I remember all the stories I heard about him." So there's a million Larry Rolla stories out there. And that's what 10% of them are in my book. The rest of this year. So anyway, okay. So answer, JB, corruption. You're 1,000% right. I don't know how you're going to fix it, but just like my friend says, that when there's profit and money on the line of morality completely disappears.
And Larry, I'd like to add something. These holier than thou, let's remember Pete Rose for a second. The holier than thou commissioners in all these sports now worship gambling, because no longer do you have to bet on a game and I'll pick a team, the Giants +3. That line will change 50, 60 times during the game. And they could just bet 1,000,000 times and they're making money hand over fist. Where things have gone off the track, you now have the proposition bets. So I'll give you an example, Larry. Let's say you're a wide receiver and the under-over is for you to get 4 catches and over 50 yards. You control that. You could tell your closest friend, "I'm not going over 50, even though you get 70, 80 yards a game, or you're a running back. I'm not going to run for 50 yards today." So it's no longer where just the referees are involved. And I think we had an instance earlier this year with a basketball player who came in the game and told his friends, "Bet against me. I'm not going to get the number of points the internet wagering sites are putting up." How these commissioners could even let proposition bets be there when an individual player could control his own destiny. He knows if he's going to catch a number of balls. He knows how many yards he's going to get. And it's now reached the point of insanity. And to bet on these games is crazy. It's just crazy. It's just
here's another thing. I'll give you my opinion on this, only because I have an opinion that might have something to do with Freehold shut down in December. That's what Jeffrey B. wrote. The reason I think nobody knows anything about this, including the mayor of the town, and it was the horsemen were completely blindsided, is because, in my opinion, the people that own Freehold Raceway already made a deal with all the unions that are involved in Freehold Raceway. Already made a deal. There's of all the maybe 4, 5, 6 unions, between the racetrack people, the dining room people, and none of them union deals were none of them union contracts were renewed, and they would just stay here till the end. Same thing happened at Roseville Raceway when my good friend Larry Page put in the highest bid on the race. When Sonny Worthington owned Roseville Raceway, made the deal months before they even announced it. So I really believe the same thing is happening here, and we're going to find out, if I'm right, that Freehold Raceway will shut down. And no matter what anybody does or what anybody says, the deal is already made. The deal was made with the unions involved. The deal was made with whoever's going to buy it, whether it be a construction company or whoever it might be. In my opinion, just like Roosevelt Raceway, this deal with Freehold Raceway was already made months ago. And that's why nobody knows anything, including the mayor of the town, because the deal was already made. And the deals with unions were already made that run. Okay. You got anything else to say, Bob?
Just that it's been a pleasure to be on your show. I love listening to your stories, and it's been entertaining. Let's put it that way, and I hope your audience enjoyed it.
Let me just finish this question by J Dog again. He says, do you remember Hazel Park and Windsor Raceway? Hazel Park, I started to tell it before, and then I stopped. I was Dr. Zarelli. He's a veterinarian. His family, Zarelli, they were the head of there was a whole, up in Detroit, that whole mob up there is probably the closest knit mob. And that's why nobody ever become a rat in Detroit. It's like a family affair, that whole thing. And Zarelli's father was one of the bosses up there. And he asked me once to try to sell the racetrack. And I tried to sell it, and I almost got the deal done. But then there was so much red tape between the owners of the racetrack and the mob and everything else. And this is something that, and I said it once, the papers and all the stories that you hear about Tony Shula, not one says the truth. And this is the truth. Tony Shula was caught in Hazel Park. The FBI was zeroing in on the Detroit mob and their race fixing and everything going on at that racetrack. And they finally made a sweep and arrested them all. Who got caught right in the middle? Tony Shula, running away from me up to Detroit, because I had Frank Collada and Anthony Spilaccio, the movie Casino. That was the part Joe Pesci played. That's the people I had going after him, and there was no stopping him. He would have been gone. He would have been in the desert with the rest of them cactus. So that's where he got caught. I believe the papers all say that he was caught someplace else, down here, someplace. It's all, but he was caught up there. He was caught in Detroit. Now, the reason I didn't say nothing and I don't talk about it that much, even though the statute of limitations is way over, is because I was just hoping that he wouldn't implicate me in anything that was going on there. And you all know what was going on there. And the only one that really could have put me in jail was jail for 7 years, never said a word. So when that whole thing, I was on the right track by then. I was on the right track. I was doing everything good, and everything was fine. And so the only thing I had to worry about was when I was on the wrong track, if Shula would have opened up on me. But Shula got arrested in the sweep of the Detroit mob at Hazel Park. Okay, so that answers that question, and that answers the other question from before. And let me see, this one said, Larry, Dr. Joe Zarelli, his grandfather was great-grandfather was Joseph Profaci. All I know is that the Detroit mob was a solid mob. No rats ever came out of there. And Joe Zarelli is probably one of the premier veterinarians in veterinarian practice, large animal. He takes care of thoroughbreds. I met him in Delaware Park. He took care of all my horses, and every horse I claimed and every horse he treated, man, good vet, great. And I learned a lot from him because I used to hang out with him after training hours. I stayed with Joe Zarelli, and he taught me a lot. And then we went to Florida, and then he had his own practice. He wound up becoming a member of a major veterinarian practice, and now he's one of the owners of this major veterinarian practice. And I think Costa, I think Costa was another veterinarian that I knew and knew well. He was the starter. Now they have a whole group of veterinarians, probably the first veterinarian. He's a really good guy and a good friend, and I really can't wait to get to Florida to see him. He gave me a personal picture once. I haven't put it up because it's a personal picture of him and his family and the everybody that you guys mentioned, and with him and his brother. And I don't want to put it up because it's personal. It's a personal picture that he gave me. Plus, I hope he's not mad at me because many times I answer these kind of questions, and if I'm going to answer the questions, I have to. I mean, the whole world knew that. Don't know that, and the sins of the father have nothing to do with the good veterinarian. Very, very smart, a real good guy, and I can't wait to see him. So, but his grandfather, his great grandfather, could have been Joe Versace. It makes no difference to me. He was a good, many of the ones that I stayed friends with my kind of people, good people. A lot of them in that way of life are not too good. A lot of them, a lot of them, they go, come on down here in Florida, Larry. I'm coming down. I'm going to go down. I'll be down there. Let's see what this one says. Joe Fafaci's daughter was moved to tacos. Yeah, it was the Israeli family. That's what I said. That whole crew up there married into one another. Who married whose daughter? Who married his? Their whole. It's a whole family affair. That's what I said in the beginning. It's a small crew, tight crew. Not one school pigeon ever come from there, but they just. They just thought it would never end, and they just figured that the FBI back then would concentrate on New York and Philadelphia and Kansas City and Chicago, but they had a crew up there in Detroit, and they were a very, very powerful crew. Okay, that's it. Let's see what this one says. Sugarman. That's it. Sugarman. That's the guy. Sugarman is a Jewish contract. Larry is Wade is Joe. That's the guy. Myron Sugarman. That's the Jewish guy that I'm going to have. Who's this guy? Tom Lusty. Sugarman is the Jewish contact Larry is wanting on the show. How did you know? How do you know that, Tom? I even forgot the guy's name. He's waiting for me to call him and take him for a dish of pasta vazou. And I'm sure you know that he has unbelievable stories with him and Maya Lansky and Carlo Gambino and all of them. He's a great storyteller. He's a good guy. And I met him through another mob guy who was a good friend, and he introduced me to him. Well, his wife did because he passed away. His wife did. Me and his wife were good friends, and she introduced me to him. Really nice guy. Will you hear his stories? I got to call him because he has some unbelievable stories about all them heavyweight mobsters back then. How many horses they owned and how they gambled and the real gamblers and how many undisclosed ownerships were back then. Harness Track Security, they formed it in 1972 to come after me. All ex-FBI agents, they formed the group, Harness Track Security. They send 4 of them up to Monticello to look after me. And they approached me one night at the Concord and they said, "How could you spend $200-300 every night in here? How do you do it, racing for this kind of money and this and that?" And I says, "I gamble and I get lucky. You know that." And but them are the kind of people. Them are the kind of people that this guy has stories about. Unbelievable stories. I get to get him on. Tom Lusty, I don't know who you are and how you knew this, but Myron Sugarman is the guy, the Jewish contact, Larry. How the hell did you know that? Wow. Well, anyway, thanks for watching, Tom, and thanks. Sugarman, Myron Sugarman, yeah. Okay, that's it. What's this one say? Every time does Tony Lasagna from Detroit ring a bell? No, I didn't go up that way. Look, the trouble when I was on the wrong path, I stayed right where I was in my little bubble where I controlled everything until I got myself out of trouble. I wasn't interested if they was nude girls up there waiting for me. They have no reason to go to Detroit or any place else except right where I was. Anyway, that's it. What's this one say? Jade is connected. Tom who? Oh, this guy Tom is connected. I have no idea. I don't know, and I don't care. As long as I'm okay, you don't do nothing to me. Anyway, Bob, thanks so much for coming on. I will see you soon, and thank you for everything, and thank you for coming on and clearing up and answering a lot of the questions that nobody had answers for. And we've been on for 2 hours and 26 minutes. Wow, I think that's a record. I think that's a record.
But if you tell that to people, they're going to think it was me speaking for 2 hours and 26 minutes. But I've enjoyed listening to your stories. You've had a hell of a life. You should make a movie about.
Well, they are. They're gonna. If it wasn't for COVID, it would have been out already, and I would have been a very wealthy guy. They had $100 million budget. I was getting 2.5% right up front. And then COVID hit, and that was the end of that. And then the Val-Longo brothers were going to take over, who wrote Green Book. And then they were staying with me, looking for locations, talking about actors and everything. And then the one brother, Frank, he got a thing of cocaine laced with fentanyl. He died right at the steering wheel, and that ended that. And then I hooked up with Barry O'Brien, who writes Law and Order and all them other, and he wrote 40 TV series that went all the way back to the Ally McBeal, all heavyweight stuff. He wants to do so he was going to do my TV series, and then he says, meet me in May 2nd in LA, and we'll go around to all these streaming networks that are my friends. So when May 1st comes, he calls me up. He says, don't come, and the writers are on strike. 9 months later, the actors go on strike. After a year and a half, now the unions are on strike. So I'm on hold. I've been on hold since 2019. So
Larry, I'm sure all your listeners and viewers would like to know who is going to play the young Larry Rolla.
Well, I could tell you this. I don't know if I should. No, maybe I can't tell you. Well, here's the two things. There's two things that are happening. I have a good friend of mine, a movie producer, looking to raise private money to make a movie that will not interfere with the TV series. Because the movie, we already have the script written. The movie is going to be maybe an hour and 3/4 long. It has 320 voiceovers, because the voiceovers, you can go through 15, 20 pages of dialogue just by voiceovers. So you could add a lot more to the stories just by voiceover, just like in Casino, they had 300 voiceovers. So, but the series, just like Nicholas Pileggi, who wrote Goodfellas and Casino, he was going to be my writer for the. In fact, I have that picture where I'm with him at Peter Luger's. Peter Luger's with the president from Sony Pictures and Village Roadshow. The 10 of us at the table there, and they asked me. They all gave speeches, and they're sitting me next to me. Nicholas Pileggi, Richard Price, who wrote The Wire, the biggest TV series ever, and they're all giving these speeches that this is going to be the greatest series, going to take over from The Sopranos and this and that. And so after everybody made a speech, they says, "Look, you're the person of honor here. Don't you want to say anything?" And I says, the only thing I want to say is I'm gonna do something here. I hope I don't screw this up. I says the only thing I want to say is that I have the picture. I'm going to put the picture up. I says the only thing I want to say is I'd like to get a picture of this table with all of these heavyweights. The boss, the CEO of Village Roadshow, which is the largest distributor of film TV series. They deal with 180 countries. Paul Bernard, head of Sony Pictures, this, that, and all these people around the table. Nicholas Pileggi, Richard Price, the actor Ed Burns. I want to take it this way. If it don't happen, I can always write another book saying I almost made it. So with that, they all laughed, but they took this picture. Here's the picture. Here it is. There's me. You look straight back. That's me in dark blue shirt. Now, if you go on the guy next to me with the blue shirt, he was the chief of detectives. He's good friends with Richard Price. He's the one that was next to him is Nicholas Pileggi, who wrote Goodfellas and all them good stories. Next to him is Steve Moscow, the CEO of Village Roadshow. Next to him is the actor Ed Burns. Next to him is Richard Price. Next to him, this girl right here, she's the head of the part of the Village Roadshow company that has the last say whether a TV show or a movie is if they're going to distribute it. This is her assistant next to him, and this little guy down here at the end with the dark shirt on. I was told that he was sent down by Steven Spielberg, that he worked for Steven Spielberg. And right next to him, sitting next to me, the guy leaning in, that's Paul Bernard. Him and his brother his brother's still there, the president of Sony Pictures. And that was here on the bottom. You could see Peter Luger, 8/4/2019. Now, after this, they told me lawyer up and everything else. I had contracts made back and forth, and then we were all supposed to meet in California, do this whole thing, and then COVID hit, and that was the end of that. So anyway, I knew I put this picture up because I knew somebody someday was going to ask me. But anyway, that's the picture that they took. So that's it. That was the closest I got to fame so far. Right there with some heavyweight people. And when I met Steve, when they sent for me, I had to go. As soon as they read the book, they sent for me, and I was in a restaurant with them, and you see all these famous movie stars coming over to them, and it was. I don't get impressed very much. Especially like movie stars and all them people. To me, they're all like, how the fuck? I can't relate to them. How the fuck you play make believe your whole life? I just can't take them serious. So they don't really interest me. But when you see like a famous movie star come to them and like trying to befriend, really nice. When 2 minutes before that, somebody asked for their autograph and they don't even sign it for them, but yet they come to these guys like puppy dogs. I just sit there just saying, like, this is the world of fantasy. This is the world of bullshit and make believe, and that's the world I'm in. But I found out real quick that is the world of bullshit. Regardless what happens, everybody's full of shit. Everything is I love you. I think the word love is the most. I think the word love is the most said word in California, Hollywood. I love you. 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 And after that is you have your people, my people, all them, all that bullshit. And I had to leave. I left California when Lou Passioka says to me, I says, "Oh, I got to get out of here." I said, "Look, you were raised and born in Harlem. So was I. Street guy. I can't handle this. Everybody loves everybody. And as soon as they walk away, that fucking, I hate that motherfucker. I can't do that. You don't know what to believe. How do you sit down and have a conversation with a guy over dinner when you don't know if it's bullshit or not? Every other guy has a card that he's a producer. So when they go out here's my card, give me a call. I have something that you might be very interested in. And they get all these girls thinking they're parts in movies. It's just a whole fucking bullshit town. Phony bullshit people. And then when the stars become stars, some of them think who the fuck they are. It's just, and I know a lot of them, especially when I used to hang out in California. I was with people. I was at Fargo's every night with heavyweight actors who, in front of certain people, they become little fucking nuts. But then when they're out and they become big shots. I'm not going to mention no names because most of them are still alive today. But anyway.
Larry, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is the rumor true that you gave Pesci the line, "Do I amuse you?" and then beat the shit out of that person?
No, I didn't give him the line. What happened was he was in a friend of mine's place.
I'm teasing you.
No, but I'm going to tell you what happened, how he got that line. The wise guy that I gave, 94-year-old wise guy that I told that I do the right thing, they were very friendly with, I can't think of the guy's name. It started with an S. If Jimmy was here, he would tell me. I just forget all these names. He was in the club one night in that bar, and Kabert was there, the guy that I owed the money to. And Pesci was there. And a guy comes in that owed him money or something. He started making a joke. And this is the guy that I owed all that money to. And all of a sudden you hear, "I'm funny? You think I'm funny?" And he took a bottle and he cracked it over the guy's head. "You still think I'm funny?" And Pesci was sitting right there. And then they get him the fuck out of here. And then the guy left and everything. But he got that line from Kabert. And I'm sure he'll admit it. And I think he did admit it. He got that line from Kabert. Was I there? No, I wasn't there. But my friend was there. All my friends were there. And he was there. And you got to remember that Joe Pesci grew up in that whole town. Joe Pesci and Frankie Valli, they had some pretty powerful mob. I mean, the whole Jersey mob were friends with them because they owned all the nightclubs. And both of them, Pesci really wanted to be a singer. He was a guitar player. And Frankie Vincent who wrote the foreword in my book. And he was the one responsible for getting this book out to California. Frankie Vincent played the drums. Pesci worked for him. He played the guitar. Frankie Vincent, Joe Pesci was the one that brought, what the hell's his name? That brought Frankie Valli. Joe Pesci brought Frankie Valli to Tommy DeVito, who was the head of the Four Seasons, who started the Four Seasons, and he was the one that got him the job with Four. I was invited. I should put the invitation up there to Tommy DeVito, who started the Four Seasons, who the Broadway show Jersey Boys was made by Tommy, with Tommy DeVito. How that happened? It was like, I believe Pesci and Frankie Valli put up $100,000 each to start that whole thing rolling. And it turned out to be the biggest money maker in Broadway history. And they have, I think, 30 or 40 or 80 road shows going on around the world. And Frankie Valli's close to 90 years old. He's still, I mean, when is enough enough? He's worth like $100 million. He's still doing these shows, and he does them well. Some people say he's lip syncing, but whatever. He packs them in. He does a good job. And Joe Pesci is basically supposed to be. He sold his houses here. He's supposed to. He moved down to California. All he wants to do is play golf, and I think probably the last movie is going to do is with the Irishman. I don't think he's going to do any more. He just wants to play golf. He's worth like $50-60 million. He don't need nothing no more, and he's happy.
And Larry, it's Pesci who really made the Four Seasons. He's the one who introduced the 16-year-old kid, Bob Gaudio.
Yeah.
Group, and they changed the name to the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
And if people don't know, Bob Gaudio's claim to fame at 16, he was a one-hit wonder. He wrote the song Short Shorts and came in, and all of a sudden he did Sherry, and then the group broke up. And Bob Gaudio and Frankie Valli became Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons. Bob Gaudio dropped out, and they did it on a handshake, never a written contract, and it's been that way for.
You're right, but that's after they paid the owner of the real owner and leader of the group, Tommy DeVito, after they paid all his $100,000 in gambling debts and give him another $100,000, and they got rid of him. And he moved to Vegas and become Joe Pesci's driver when Pesci was in Vegas.
And as Tommy DeVito says at the end of Jersey Boys, his hand to God. You tell them you know Tommy DeVito, they'll throw you out of that casino so fast you won't know what hit you. And
Tommy DeVito got married, and my friend Alfred Natoli, who's Pesci's double, and they all grew up together. He got married in his backyard with Alfred and Sharman, his wife, and my good friend who helped me write the book. It wasn't with Sharman, none of that would have happened, including this with Tommy. My friend Tommy, they started this whole podcast with that name, Frankie Vincent. Tommy DeVito passed away. I was lucky enough to see him for his 90th birthday. I had to fly out to Vegas. And it was good to see him again. But all of them guys, they were barbers. But you know what I didn't like? I'll tell you what I didn't like. What bothers me. I can't say too much because I get very angry and I have a lot to say. But I don't, because out of respect for my friend Alfred Natoli, who's Joe Pesci's double. Joe Pesci helped my friend Alfred a lot. He got him in all the movies he was in. He got him to play his double. He got him parts in movies. He got him the most money that he could possibly get, and because of that, he has pensions. So he owes a lot to Pesci. Then you go to Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons. Alfred is a terrific songwriter. Him and his Sharman. They wrote a song, "Here's to the Band," which is an unbelievable song. Sinatra sang it, and if you've never heard of it, listen to "Here's to the Band," because all of them guys were in bands their whole life. Pesci, all of them, they all had bands. They all grew up together in bands. Pesci played the guitar, Frankie Vincent the drums, Muzzy and Alfred the saxophone. Go on and on and on. And Alfred wrote a song. And if you ever heard the song, he wrote, it was unbelievable. And when he played it, it sounded better than any of the songs that, in the same kind of music that Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons did. Bob Gaudio refused to have Frankie Valli sign it. Now, these are the shitty things that bother me. Frankie Valli and Alfred are like this, but Frankie Valli and Bob Gaudio are partners. So Bob Gaudio says, no, we only play the songs that I write or the songs that I approve. We're going in a different direction. Because he didn't write the song, he wouldn't play it. And someday I'm going to play it right on here. Alfred wrote the song, and you would swear that it was probably one of the best, it would have been one of the best Frankie Valli songs ever. But because of all that bullshit. Well, we didn't write it, and we're not taking no odds. So all that stuff. We don't accept any unsolicited material. Get the fuck out of here. Do you remember 5 years ago when you were knocking at the fucking door begging for a fucking job? Now all of a sudden you're a big shot, and people that are in the same position that you were before. These are the things that drive me crazy. And
Larry, Larry, could I ask you a question? You, all these guys, you grew up with them. Did you sing under the lamppost with them too on the street?
No, but my friends wrote that song. That what the hell's the name of it? Street in the Bronx. What the hell's the name of that song? It's a nice song. In fact, my friend, who's an actor and all, he sings it in his nightclub act.
Are you talking about
Streets
Silhouette?
of the Bronx. Streets of
You're talking about Silhouette? Took a walk under the street. Silhouette, silhouette, silhouette.
No, not that song. That's a different song. You might even be, that's a different song. Anyway, I showed you the picture. It's my picture of fame. I'll probably never get surrounded by all sorts of people than that. And it's insane because when we left, he gave me a hug and a kiss and says, "We're going to do this, kid." And it would have got done. The contracts were signed and everything else. And it wasn't their fault. It was really nobody's fault. It was just COVID that fucked everything up. So.
Well, if you send them this podcast tonight, just to remind them who you are, I have a feeling the movie will be made real quick.
No, they have so many. They have so many. The hell happened here? They have so many. They have so many projects that get to them between agents and managers. And I'll tell you a real quick story, and then we're going to go. My friend, Alfredo Leone, he's a movie producer. He had offices in Rome for years and owns a bunch of Bava. Bava was a famous, like a Spielberg of Italy years back. And he had an Italian film called Rabid Dogs. And there was a big agency here. I forgot, Warner Brothers, one of them, that they wanted to make Rabid Dogs into an American film. So, but my friend Alfredo Leone owned it. So at that time, I was traveling with him in California because we were trying to buy the Judy Garland library when she did them 27 TV shows. We had them pre-sold to Homebox. But anyway, so we're sitting in the office and they're making a deal. They want the option to rewrite it with his approval, and then they pay him. So they give him 40, 50,000 for the option. And while I'm sitting there, while they're making this deal, he's sitting Alfredo was sitting next to him, in front of it, by him, and I'm sitting a little back on the side with the secretary. And every once in a while, another girl would come in from outside and bring. They're all screenplays. All out of the envelope. They first got to pass whoever's in the other office. And the ones that pass get brought to him. And you can tell because it's all maybe 120, 130 pages with two rivets in them that hold the pages together. And then the girl gets up, takes it back, brings it to her desk, and she goes through them, and she put 2 or 3 here, and the rest she put up against the wall. Up against the wall were screenplays from the floor to the ceiling. The whole thing must have been thousands of them there. After the deal was made, we went to lunch on Rodeo Drive, and we're sitting there, and Alfred and the guy are talking. I'm sitting opposite the secretary, and I said to her, I says, I got to ask you a question. One of them screenplays, he says, we get thousands of them. Every week we get thousands of them. And she says, they screen through them out front. The ones that are brought to me are with big names attached, either a producer, a director, or a star. Them are the ones we find, that are the ones that reach my desk. Out of them, I have to pick the 1 or 2 to give to him. And the rest go up against the wall. And once a month, we have a place that comes in that shreds every. get a movie made, especially back then, it was so impossible that you have to be an agent even to get a thing to it, and you better be a big enough agent. That whole game is so full of shit. It's but anyway, let me just go through here because I see here. Oh, this guy says my Larry, your voice is going in and out off microphone. Here I have. Yeah, I know. I shouldn't even be talking. Let me see it. I've got a lot. Let me go real quick. Let's see. Frank Sinatra. What's this say? Frank Sinatra, if not the greatest singer ever. Frank Sinatra is, if not, he is the greatest singer. Frankie Valli. Frankie Valli worth 80 million. Frankie Valli's brother is on my friend's show, probably on Sunday. They're going to do a documentary um, with Frankie Valli's brother. He was on the show last Sunday. What's this say? Sopranos. What's this say? Joe Pesci is one hell of an actor. That's not acting. That's how Pesci is in real life. That's not one bit of acting. And he says what he says in all of them movies. He never went to acting school, nothing. Larry, your voice is in and out. All right. Do your in the movie. Yeah, I can't. I know who it is, but I don't think I'm allowed to say it. They know who's going to play me. He's a pretty famous TV actor. That's for the TV series. There's going to be a different actor that plays me if we're able to raise the private money to make the movie. But I can't say that neither. This guy, he was suggested. Leonardo. Sherry, that was Frankie Valli's first hit. Okay, that's it. Now we really broke all records. 2 hours and 51 minutes, Bob. 2 hours and 51 minutes. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I think your audience could listen to your stories for another 3 hours.
Well, most of my stories they heard a million times. Every once in a while, you see the problem I have, Bob. I don't remember when I wrote that book. I had to call we called up for 6 months. All the people that worked for me, all the people that remember stories, and I wrote the book. I wrote the book only because they begged me to write it. When Frank Collada, the guy that was Spilatro, he was Spilatro's killer in Vegas. That's the movie Casino. We did something 1974. Did me a big favor. He just got out of jail. He says, before I could do this favor, we have to go to Vegas and see Spilatro, which is the guy Joe Pesci played in Casino. So we go out there and tell him what the deal is. And he says, okay. So he sends a couple of guys with me, and we do what we have to do. A couple of years later, many years later, Frank Collada calls me up. He's out of jail. He calls me up and he says, I'm writing a book. In fact, I got the book right here. He says, I'm writing a book. He says to me, here's the book. He says to me, I don't know if you could see it or if it's backwards. Right. Can you see it, read it straight, or it's backwards, the writing? I don't know.
No, we can see it. It's okay. Yeah.
The Rise and Fall of
Lobster.
Okay. That's the book he wrote. And he wrote it in 2017, I think, something like that. So he calls me up. No, he says, can I use that story that we did, about what we did in 74? And I says, well, I don't give a fuck. What do I care? It's 50 years ago. Do whatever you want. So he writes there's a chapter in the book about what we did. So I see him at a wedding. And he says to me, you should write your life story. He says, because that chapter in the book, when I do the mall tours in Vegas, I get asked more about that chapter than anything else. So now he's the advisor for the movie Casino because he was there because everybody else was dead. So he's the advisor of the casino. So after casino, Frankie Vincent gets a hold of me and he says, you got to write your life story. Frankie's right. He says, we know you since kids and everything else, what you went through and this and that, and from a kid to do this and this. It's better than any of these mob stories. So they convinced me to write the book. That's how I wrote the book. And that's why Frankie Vincent wrote the foreword in the book. And they gave me the first whenever, and I says, I can't, you're going to make, I says, look, the only people who are going to read this thing, that are interested in this kind of shit, is people in their 70s, the font bigger. So if you notice in the book, the fonts are 14, number 14, which is a bigger font. So people that need reading glasses, they don't need it. So that's how come that's what I said. I said, you think the kids are going to read this? Fucking old mob guys are going to read this shit. They're going to be looking for their name. And that's why the font is bigger. And I put a lot of pictures in there because some of the stories, even though the stories in the book are 10% of my life, because when I wrote the book, they told me self-publish it so you own it. Don't sell it to a publisher, you own it. So they hooked me up with Michael Benson, and he wrote like 150 books. He's a real good writer. He told me what to do, how to do it. And he wrote the whole book outline to research and everything else. Then me and Shaman got a hold of it. We made a bunch of changes, added in the right languages and everything else. And then Michael Benson's daughter, who was really good, she put the cover on the book. And Frankie Vincent wrote the foreword, or whatever you call it, in the book. And then I got a bunch of blurbs from Tommy DeVito from the Four Seasons, Frank Collada, a lot of heavyweight people. They was real nice. So that's how come I wrote the book, and then all the other bullshit happened. Otherwise, but my real, I would give anything that if I didn't take the path I took back in the 70s, this is 50 years ago, I fucked up for 3 or 4 years and basically reputation because of that. Was lucky enough to have the people that knew what I did and why I did it support me in 1978, got me from a park bench to a multi-millionaire with 80 horses, center, 7 homes, everything I ever wanted to do. I was on cloud 9. And to protect 4 guys, I lost everything. And that's why it bothers me sometimes when I hear these you ruined racing and you did this. It's so hard to be nice and not to say, why don't you put yourself in my shoes and on the way there, go fuck yourself. It's so hard not to say that. But you have to be nice. And I try to answer all the questions. But the people that knew why and where and how I did it understand why I did it. And that's it. Now, I talked a little bit, so in 3 minutes, we're going to hit the 3 hours. So we're going to just blah, blah, blah for 3 more minutes. This way I could say I don't even think at a podcast that lasted 3 minutes. But we did. So for 3 minutes, just 2.5 more minutes.
Well, Larry, you do realize midway through this, we switched roles where I became the host, asking you the questions for the last hour and a half.
Yeah.
I hijacked the Larry Rolla show against all odds. And by the way, one of my Uptown Charlie Brown first horses I had, I named it Against All Odds.
Did you?
Yeah, he raced once and I retired him because he was a little horse with a lot of heart and he wasn't going to make it. And I gave him a home and I put him in an aftercare program. I didn't want to break him down on the racetrack, but that was his name, Against All Odds, by Uptown Charlie Brown.
They asked me what did I want to name, and Michael Benson suggested The Fixer, and I said that represents. At that time, I was 80 years old. I says that represents 4 years of my life. I says I'm 84 years old. What I did the other 70 years and how I survived doing what I did was against all odds. And that's what the name of the book should be. Not concentrate on 4 years when I did what I had to do, which was not nice and not the right thing, but I did what I had to do. People ask me, how could, and I get one or two of these questions, and I put them right up and I answer them. They say, how could you be in the horse business for 60 years and all you did was win 1,000 races or whatever? Who the fuck ever kept track? I never kept track of nothing. I wasn't one of them. I did what I had. So my answer to that was in a very nice way, even though the question was like nasty. You talk about being in a horse business 60 years. All you did was win 1,000 races or 1,500, whatever you won. And my answer to that was the truth. During the days when I was in big action, I won the races I had to win, and I lost the races I had to lose. And if you think it's a whole lot easier, so that's my answer to you. I won the races I had to win, and I lost the races I had to lose. And that's why I'm still alive today. So that's the only answer, and that's the truth. Try to have 3 horses in, all even money, and finish 6th, 7th, and 8th, and make it look good. It's not easy to do. But anyway, one more minute. Let's see. That's it. Frank Sinatra. Okay, that's it. Bob, we officially made 3 hours. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm going to see you Wednesday, and that's it. I thank you so much for all the information, and I'll see you Wednesday.
And did you tell the audience last Wednesday you missed getting into the winner's circle by an inch?
Lester, I thought it was a head, Bob. Bob had a horse in horse.
We're going for 4 hours, folks. Get
the horse was like 14-1, and the kid that you said that I know that says I know Larry Rolla and I know of all his stories. That kid said to you, this horse is going to win. He got a hell of a shot. And I'm looking at the program, and I said, okay, that's fine. And I went to the window. To bet. That's probably the second bet I made in 40 years. And I went to the window and bet, and I'm lying, and they only had two live tellers. The rest were machines. I have no idea how to work the machine, so I went to the live one. Now they're loading in the gate, and there's only one lady in front of me, and she's one of these things. Give me give me the 1 with the 3 and the 4, and then this, and then do this, and then oh no, I didn't want that. So they had to cancel that ticket and everything else. Then the bell rang, the gate opened, they got shut out. But the horse got beat. I thought it was a head, Bob. I thought he'd win, but I must have misjudged, because the next step he was. I thought he'd win, but he was 14-1, and the favorite win. And I don't even know how much the exact pay, because I think we left right after that race.
It was about $38 with the favorite. It was 11.5 lengths back, 12.5 lengths back to the next horse.
Yeah.
So we had a good shot. The next time you'll see that horse is in the Claiming Crown Championship at Churchill Downs on November 16th.
You told me about that $100,000 race.
150.
Unbelievable.
Horses that started for a claiming price of $16,000 or less. We had a good race, didn't we?
I wish I went by what the kid said. And I mean, if he was 3-4-1, I would have sat in my seat, but it was 14-15-1. I said, this kid been around a long time. That's the kid that used to stay with us with Alan, and he used to, so he's been around a long time.
Do you know who the kid is?
You said I know him. I don't remember him. I don't know. I forgot his name already.
I know him pretty well. His name is Jarrett. It's my son.
Yeah, Jarrett.
It's my son.
That kid is your son?
That's Jarrett. Yep. He's 49 years old today. You knew
that kid at the end was your son.
Yes. That's
Well, why didn't you tell me that night, that day?
he was telling you all the stories you told him when he was a kid and he would come back to Bond 38. That's how he knew all the stories.
I didn't know that was your son.
You told him. Yeah, that was Jared.
Oh my God.
Yep. There used to be.
Is he going to be there Wednesday when I come?
He'll be there.
I got to apologize. I had no idea because you're saying to me, don't you? I don't remember him. I don't remember him. But if you would have said, is this your son? Because he did say, but when Larry was around, I was only a kid.
Yeah.
I did.
It was him, my other son, Aaron, and Ryan Seawald, Alan Seawald's son.
He was there that day?
Yeah.
Alan Seawald was there the day I was at Parks the other day.
No. Alan Seawald is dead, but back then.
His son.
Yeah, it was my two sons and Alan Seawald's son, Ryan. But no, he wasn't here this past Wednesday.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why Jared was telling you all the stories you told him when he was a kid. He remembered them all. He was repeating what you told him.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know it was your son because I kept asking you, who is this kid? You could have said he's my son. You just says, oh, he was around. You don't remember him?
Well, until right now, I thought you knew who you were talking.
I didn't know. Oh, jeez.
Those kids idolized you. They remember every story you told them.
When I says, who is that kid? You says, Jared, don't you know him? All you had to do was say, that's my son, Jared. That's all you had to say. Oh,
I left out my son.
I feel like a real jerk now. I hope he's there Wednesday when I get there. Oh, boy. Oh, my God.
Larry, one of the good things at our age, and by the way, I didn't want to say anything. The wisdom we have today, people look at us with the white hair and we're old. They have no idea the wisdom you acquire all these years. You didn't have it when you were 13, 14, 15, but do what I do. When you see Jared say, I always play the dementia card when people say to me, oh, I forgot. That's what I do. But you are as sharp as a tack.
Even when I says to you, I even said to you, what's that kid do for a living? And you never even said that he's my son. He's an agent. He's this, he's that. Because I asked a couple of times, I just don't remember him. What's he do? Because he said he's a jockey's agent, but not for long. This might be the last week.
Yep.
Nobody told me he was your son.
And he's 49 years old now.
He's 49?
49. How old does that make us? Are we past 35, Larry? He's 49 now. And you knew him when he was 16. And he knows every story you told him. That's the amazing thing. That's the impression.
Every question that everybody had to do at the table, he knew the answer. Who trained this horse? When's this horse? This horse? Very, very knowledgeable kid. I wish you would have told me he was my son. Because I even asked 2 or 3 times, who's this kid? How's he make a living? You never said nothing. Oh, God.
Larry, he loves you. Ryan Seawald, everybody who has met you, you've made an impression on their life, and you have the greatest respect. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I'm telling you the truth. You have the video of our cow pasture where we run on the turf, but we won't go there again. So thank you for having me as a guest. Thank you for entertaining me. I've listened for the last hour and a half, 2 hours to your stories. And
oh, no, I'm going to get a lot of comments. So why don't you let the guy talk? You talk too much.
No, you don't. No, you don't, Larry. I think people truly that understand, that have the wisdom, and you only get wisdom through age, and they'll realize.
But sometimes it's hard to tell a story without telling what leads up to the story and what happened after the story. It's hard to say. Well, how much did you have to pay him? $16,000 a week in VIG. How'd you do that? It involves a lot of stuff. It ain't just one word answers. And that's why I ramble on. In fact, when I had to meet with after that meeting, after that sit down I had with after this meeting, uh, Nicholas Pileggi and Richard Price and the actor Eddie Burns, they get a hold of me and they says, we'd like to sit and talk with you and start mapping this whole thing out. So we're going to meet at Richard Price's house. He has a big brownstone, like a $5-10 million brownstone. We're going to meet there. He's going to have a catered affair, and we're going to meet there, and we're going to discuss how we're going to go about this, where, when, how. And why the hell was I telling this story? I forgot. Anyway, we wind up meeting there, and we had lunch. They recorded the whole conversation. Oh, and the night after this dinner, I went to Alfred's house, who's Pesci's double and Sharman, who helped me write the book, and I said, I told him about the meeting, and I says they invited me to the house with Nicholas Pileggi and Richard Price, all these heavyweight guys. I mean, they with Scorsese, they made the best movies ever. And I says, I'm going to meet him. So Alfred says, just answer the questions. Don't rant, because I ramble on forever. Answer the questions and shut the fuck up. Just answer their questions. So we sit down, and Pileggi asked me a question, and I answered the questions, but I had to give a little bit more. Anyway, I rattled on. After about an hour, I realized that. I says, I'm really sorry. He said, what are you sorry about? Because they never said a word. They just sat there. He said, what are you sorry about? I says, I never did this before. My whole life I've been my own boss. I did my own thing. I never was in this environment before. And sometimes I ramble on because maybe it's all built up inside of me because I talked to horses my whole life. And so I says, Alfred told me just to answer the question. You asked me a question, answer it, and just be short and sweet with your answer. And I've been rattling off for almost an hour and a half. And Pileggi says to me, you tell Alfred to mind his own business. What you just said that wasn't in the book was more interesting than the answer you could have gave for the question that I asked. Keep going. And they recorded that whole thing, because sometimes I just ramble on. Now, if you ask me about a specific thing, I have to think about it. But if I start a story and go on and on and on and on, I'll get to the whole thing. So anyway, that's it. That's it. It's been an hour, 3 hours and 13 minutes. It's now 11:13. Thank you again, Bob. I'm hitting the off button. I'm hitting this here. Where the hell is it?
Thank you, Larry. And we now have, I think, longer running time than the 10 Commandments. We've done better than Cecil B. DeMille. Are you ready for your close-up, Larry?
See you Wednesday. Good night. Good night, folks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Oh, let me get this thing off first. Hold it. I got to do this. So why is that? How do I do this now? I got to do this. How do I do this? How do I do this? Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Oh, I know how I do it. I got to get J-Dog off, otherwise it stays up there. So I go back to this, and then I hit the closing. Good night, Bob. Good night, folks. Thanks.
Night.
See you Wednesday, Bob.
I'll see you Wednesday.
Tuesday. Good night.
Good night, everybody.